But episode 38, Badass Records podcast, John Ingle.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going very well. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
I didn't know. I thought we were already in the episode.
Well, it's
Are we kind of partially in the episode already?
I mean, I won't know until I go back, and
Gotcha.
it's so. I mean, it's so weird because like I see myself ask the same question more than once in one thing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I'm like thinking about notes and thinking about the music and thinking about the flow of the conversation, and so I'm not like 100% listening all the time.
No, I get it.
So add to the fact that looking at your own dumb face and hearing your own dumb voice for the second time of a second version of a conversation, and then seeing yourself act like an idiot, it's just like brutal. So every time we lose film, like when we lost 2/3 of Lisa's, it's like, why couldn't it have been mine? Like, I love looking at the guest's face when I do the edit, but I look at my face.
I get it. See, I do all my podcasting on Zoom these days.
Okay.
Like, my podcast partners are all over the country. So we're always on Zoom, and I'm always looking at my face, but it's kind of fun. Like, if somebody else is talking and I'm making faces, and it's too much fun. But we don't do video, so I never see us talking.
Right.
But, yeah.
Especially if, I don't know if it's... oh, God damn it. I forget the wall and the claps. That helps me line up the audio wave.
Sound,
yeah. Anyway, if I remember, a certain portion where the conversation is immediately about to go, or what if I just know, like, oh, this is where he talked for like 6 minutes about Boston Terriers, and I can peel, all of that camera away,
Right.
but it's on me, like, and so.
And you're going like.
No, I'm like touching my nose and licking my lips, and like, God, what is wrong with you? You see it a whole bunch of times happen in a row, just like, oh.
Right.
So you're, I think, if my math is correct, the 6th guest from the McCoy's family.
Okay.
So thank you for being here.
I know Adam and Lisa and Gherkin.
Adam, Lisa, Gherkin, Ethan Brown.
Oh, Ethan, right? Yeah. Oh, well, he wasn't really McCoy's. Right? He was Foundry.
Family.
Foundry, yeah.
I mean, they cut a hole in the wall and they connected them. And then Elwin. I don't know if you remember Elwin. Do you remember Lyerly?
Yes, I know. Okay, that's more of a name I know from Dylan Brown, Constant Lyerly. That kind of just name mentioning. And I think I probably did meet him, but it's so long ago. I think he was before.
Yeah.
Kevin, or at the same time as Kevin, but Kevin might have taken over his job or something.
No, Mark was always he was a front of the house manager. But
the front of the house manager. So Kevin was GM when I came on. McLean was the reason I got the job.
Okay.
Richie. How did we? It's been 20 years, man.
Rich.
McKinney.
Yep.
And was that it? It might have been. They might have been rolling with a pretty thin crew. I mean, when I first came, I can't remember who.
Jim Ligon was in there probably before.
I never worked. Jim Ligon, I know really well, but never from McCoy's. And I didn't even know
Phelan.
Phelan was later
for a minute.
Yeah, I remember Phelan, of course.
Erica was
later.
But
I'm talking about that first. This is 2000.
Tristan.
Summer of 2000. Tristan was the other one.
Tristan
there
Blacon.
Haven't seen him in a million years.
I know.
But that was my summer of 2003 hire in.
Okay.
And it was McLean through Lisa. So Lisa and I knew each other. And then we got drunk with McLean.
Wilkinson?
Yes.
Okay.
So we knew each other from 39th Street, like 39th and Bell neighborhood. Pardon me. And her and I went out drinking, and McLean was there. And so we got really drunk with McLean, drunk McLean, the hair and all that. Remember how he would put his...
Yes.
At the point he realized he was drunk enough, he'd put his fingers through his hair, and it would stick up, and you'd like not even be looking at him, and you look over and see that hair up, and you're like, there he is.
I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
It's pretty much like that. And so he and I we were all hanging out, and at the time I was working at the Tivoli Theater and at Video Mania, making $0, like both minimum wage jobs, just for movies, movie benefits.
Yeah.
And couldn't make ends meet, so I'm complaining about that. And then one afternoon, I'm working at Video Mania. I walk over to pick up to-go food from McCoy's, and he just walks up to me and goes, "Hey, you want a job here?"
That sounds very McLean.
And I was like, yeah, if you got one, because I had serving experience at a couple places before that. And so he's like, okay, cool. Come back tomorrow. So the next day I come back and I'm sitting at the same spot at the bar. And he's like, we'll talk to Kevin in a minute. He's in the plot room in a meeting. So McLean goes in there. I'm sitting at the bar watching TV. Then McLean just comes out and goes, Kevin said you're cool. Just come back.
Nice.
So I didn't even interview for
Nice.
my job at McCoy's. Funny because that's so, not knowing Kevin Kim at all at the time.
Right.
Immediately, that's who he was. Like it encapsulates Kevin in a lot of ways. Like good judgment, super casual dude, just very, very cool guy.
Yep.
So, and the good times began there. That was
yeah, man.
quite
And also
a formative period of my life for sure.
Absolutely. But he's all those ways, and in a way that's very him. But also, like, I mean, not that it would happen too terribly often for dinner service, but like if Kevin was running a shift, I mean, he knew he could do expo blindfolded. He could carry a ton of plates. He had a just like a nice balance of like, hey guys, and like also like let's have fun, right?
Yeah. Ultra competent.
Yes.
Like never, like, and we're not talking about a man who did not have a temper, or he used it when in situations we don't need to go into, but never like, I never saw it in the workplace situation.
No, he was always even keel there, I thought.
And he's the only guy, I don't know if I had I think there was a handful of us that had a special relationship with him to where we could actually ask to cut the floor. And he would let us do it. Like I could go up to Kevin. I learned early. So many other managers will like react defensively to that.
Sure.
But I remember, and it was a bad standard to set, But I would go up and say, "Hey, Kevin, I think we can cut 4," and he would just go, "No mas," every single time, exactly the same. Kevin, we can cut 4. Oh, no mas, because remember 4 was that kind of like, what would you call it?
By the brewery?
No, 4 was the one where you kind of cut into the other sections.
Oh,
so it was like a little. You had the bistro.
Oh,
Table numbers are not gonna. I might not have those anymore. I think it was 6, 7, 8, like 13, 14, and then 25 over. So you had pieces of all the other sections. So it was the first cut section easily because 4's out, and then everybody just moves and takes their tables.
Yeah.
And so it'd be like, Kevin, can we cut 4? And he just go, no mas.
So what would happen if you
what a guy
didn't have
the floor?
If you didn't have the in to ask that, and somebody,
I think he'd be like, he was still nice to people. He wasn't angry. But now some managers, we know, restaurant managers, never ask them to cut the floor because they'll just keep everybody on.
Yeah.
The whole shift. It's kind of like, okay.
But
yeah, that's the server stuff.
Yeah. Lyerly, I mean, I don't even know. There's no way he could still be doing Casey Hopps stuff because his youngest is, I mean, they travel, I think, every weekend for baseball. Like his kid is, and I think he pitches. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he left McCoy's and maybe went back to, like, maybe he came to McCoy's from Hopps and then went back to Hopps and was there forever. But his good buddy Elwin would come in sometimes and drink. Bald black dude with glasses. And then he did. He's a Raiders fan. He did a blog interview with me about. I used to try to interview a fan of the team the Chiefs were playing that week. Mm-hmm. So he did a Raiders thing, and so I reached out to him for this, and I learned when we sat down to talk that he hosted for a minute, which would have been before my time, or I don't remember. But anyway, so I count him. He's kind of
okay. If it was before your time, you were there when I got there, so your time is before. If it was before your time, it's definitely before my time. But I do think I might know who you're talking about now. Yeah, that you described him a little bit.
Super sweetheart. I mean, like.
Then how can he be a Raiders fan? I don't understand.
Yeah, there's a couple.
I was raised to believe they were all bad people.
I don't think my parents ever said, but I think I convinced myself that there were a couple criminals on the roster.
My mom's attitude towards the Raiders growing up was such that when I was little and growing up in this like evangelical environment I grew up in, I thought they were all going to hell. I'm not kidding. That was really a thought I had. at like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that I'm like, oh, those poor guys, they're all damned to hell.
It's gonna be hot
For
down there.
putting on that
You're gonna be on
uniform.
fire forever.
But that was just because I equated things that
Yeah.
way, and my parents, my mom, boy, she was the one that kicked me into gear, Chiefs fan wise.
Okay.
I was a bit of a Cowboys fan when I was little. Because
I'm 74. Are you
74?
Okay.
So we're talking.
And they were always on the damn television when we were kids.
Yeah, I don't remember the Chiefs being on TV at all.
Because they were. I
mean, I'm sure they were, but for some reason I don't remember.
Dude, I don't remember at all.
Right. And so the situation in my neighborhood, this is up in Excelsior Springs. So I'm the youngest boy in the neighborhood. So I'm the little like.
Are you an only child?
Hey guys. No, I got an older sister, but she just stayed in the house all the time. She didn't have any friends in the neighborhood. So I'm running around going, hey guys, let's play. Yeah. And the neighbor to my left was a Steelers fan, and the neighbor across the street was a Cowboys fan. And they had those like Sears catalog plastic helmet and like crappy polyester jersey, and they'd put them on and we'd play football.
Yeah.
So I chose the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys were glamorous at the time.
They were.
There was a comic book of the Cowboys at
That's
the time.
when they actually kind of were America's team.
They were.
Like
they were exciting.
Before they got real good in the 80s and started winning shit in the 90s. And
it was the 90s. The 80s were where they actually... I remember there being a real valley there. They weren't very good.
No.
I don't know. I can't remember.
I remember Staubach and Danny White,
but that ended in like 84
and then after that I don't remember, so they must not have been very good.
Well, another reason for me not to remember is that's when my mom finally said, look,
what are you doing?
Get
in the house.
I don't remember the exact, it was just something like, I had this big Dallas Cowboys sweatshirt and I started to grow out of it, and she's like, we're actually in Kansas City, and we're like, I'm a Chiefs fan. My mom used to go to Memorial Stadium games, pre-Arrowhead.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And so we started watching. Then I were watching Chiefs on TV, which I didn't remember doing before. And then it was 86. Is it 86 or 87? I think it's 86. That the special teams was so amazing that we went to the playoffs.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we scored more touchdowns on special teams than we did on offense, or something weird like that.
We fired John Makovic and promoted Frank Gans.
I think so. It was actually Makovic was still the coach when they went to the playoffs, because Gans was the special team coach. And then they might have overreacted, firing Makovic.
Yes.
And then Gans was terrible, and then it was Schottenheimer. There might have even been a guy in between. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
It was like 88 or 89 that we got Schottenheimer.
Yeah. I mean, Carl and Marty came as almost basically a package deal in the 80, going into the 89 season, 89. I think.
And then first thing they do is draft Derek Thomas.
DT.
So it was over. But that team...
Ethan Brown, every time, RIP in peace. So every time
double piece.
Yeah, right. So, but I'm sorry, DT.
Well, so that I was actually my first guy was Drawn Cherry though. I was so into Drawn Cherry right away.
The cards the cops used to get?
Exactly. That was all I knew of the Chiefs before.
Same.
Like there was a little police station in Excelsior Springs, and if we were in that neighborhood, I would walk over. My mom would take me over there. I'd get the Chiefs cards. I didn't care about the Chiefs when I was little, but one of those free football cards.
Duron Cherry or a Stephon Page. I mean, those were the shit to have.
Is it 309? Is that the single game receiving record still? He caught like 309 yards in a game in like 85 or 86.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's something strange.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really strange.
Huh.
But yeah, I love Stephon. I still talk about that's Adam Boyd and I'll occasionally bring up, because he's too young to remember Stephon Page,
right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I'll bring him up and as the quintessential Chiefs receiver from my childhood.
I mean,
and he was still pretty good up until the point, that I was a fan.
He was.
Yeah.
I was telling my son on the way to his baseball game. I forget how the heck it came up. I mean, he's like me. I mean, the minute you turn that car on and are on the street, just zoned, just like hello, kind of, and right circumstances, that's usually the precursor to a nap,
right,
for both of us. So he's quiet. I'm listening. I'm singing along like pretty loudly to No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Just came on, and I'm fucking. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, Dad," and I was like, "Yeah, I turned it down." And he's like, "Have you ever thought about how weird it is that the world is so big, but there's only one Arrowhead Stadium?" And I was like, nope. I think about how big the world is all the time. But and so I started talking about how cool and unique and amazing the organization and the stadium are. I mean, it took us all the way to the stadium, and then I was like, by the way, like, I'm biased. Like, it's impossible for me to talk about the Chiefs without a little extra zhuzh because I grew up living and dying with them. But my dad told me, and so I was telling him that in the early, possibly late 80s, when NFL films would come, they would say, if there's a big pass play, do not have the camera follow the ball, because they didn't want the world to see that the top. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like, it still stings to hear when I was like, no way, we were that bad.
Yeah, we were bad.
Yeah, we were 100% really that bad.
Yeah, that special teams year was so exciting. That was enough. It hooked me.
Yep.
And then I was Deron Cherry got. See, I feel bad for not remembering. He might have gotten 4 interceptions in a game.
Think so.
I think he did.
Think so.
So I was hooked, and I remember my dad. What was the name of that sporting goods store? It's not a sporting goods store. It's more like a T-shirt, sporting novelty store or whatever. And they just opened the town pavilion downtown, and there was one in there. And my dad went in there to get my Christmas present. Was going to be a jersey, but it was really just like a Chiefs T-shirt that then he had them print Cherry 20 on the back, and he was having them print this up custom. And his wife came up, and she's like, "Oh, who's the big Deron Cherry fan?" And my dad was like, "My son." She's like, "Well, he's my husband." And this kind of stuff happens to my dad. He had the same kind of conversation with Willie Wilson's wife one time at Kaufman.
Wow,
like just random stuff that happens to my dad. But all that stuff makes you, like, as a child, that's it seems just kind of like an offhanded meeting as an adult, but as a child, it was like some omen or something. Like, you don't think about it that way, but it solidifies and calcifies things for you.
I still get a little bit of that omen feel as an adult.
Oh, well, yeah. When it comes to sports, sports are a whole. I think about the world of sports different than I think about the world.
Yeah, it's probably smart. No probably smart.
Yeah. But so the Chiefs thing, that's kind of where it started, and then I'm just rabid fan. Once my dad took me to William Jewell. When they were training camp there, I saw Christian Okoye walk by and saw that. I mean, there was something about just the impressiveness of his physique that I'll never forget. It was like him and Marty were walking side by side down the little walkway to go out to the practice field. Yeah. It was just like, and then I started playing football right after that.
Nice.
I was hitting high school, so all of that put together, Chiefs fandom, big time. And then a few years ago, 10 years ago, I lived in Denver.
Yeah,
and that just like. I was already a Giant fan, but living in enemy territory.
That's nothing better for you. Oh, dude.
Yeah, it really
and you know what? I'm 22 years removed. It's still on full.
I know.
This Russell I could just, like, I don't need porn anymore. I can just jerk off to Russell Wilson gaffes and Broncos being stupid.
What a weird situation that is.
And
how it's opening up. I mean, we don't have to go on and on about Russell Wilson, but it's funny how he's in Seattle and everybody. Look, I'm not going to say he's a good football player. Let's not fool ourselves. Something's weird's going on here. There's some lack of cohesion or anything. I'm not sleeping on him. I'll just put that. I don't know when this is going to.
The minute you look away, he'll be
coming up. I'm not sleeping on the Broncos, but he's in Seattle and everybody reveres him and talks about, oh well, Carroll's holding him down and all these things. He comes to Denver. He starts screwing up. And he becomes a bit of a laughingstock early in the season, and suddenly all of his old teammates are coming out of the woodwork to talk shit. It's weird. And I kind of like,
he seems like
a strange dude, but it sounds like he's a real strange dude.
I saw a TikTok last night. It's Richard Sherman podcasting with Marshawn and talking about how he doesn't shower. He showers or has a separate space.
Doesn't give his phone number to any of his teammates.
I think the list is kind of, growing slowly. Mm-hmm. Super weird.
I think the best take I've heard on his play, and why it's an issue and why it may or may not change, was Jeff Schwartz on his podcast said that he is, he's bragged about all these very specific training regimens he goes through and all this stuff, and how he lives his life and all these things in very strict ways. And he's like, when you turn yourself into a very specific kind of robot, it's really hard to reprogram. If you have to make adjustments, you can't do it because you've gone down this straight road for so long. And why maybe he can't adjust. Maybe he can't straighten it out. I don't know. It was an interesting take because we have seen him kind of he is a robotic. I mean, what's more robotic than getting your ass handed to you in a game, going out giving the most depressed press conference, and then when you walk away, you still say your catchphrase. It's very
What did he say?
He was walking away, and he's just like, oh no, this loss, blah blah blah, the players, this and all the team, whatever, gobbledygook, in the press conference, and then it's like, okay, I'm done. Broncos country.
Oh my god!
And then he's like walking away, and he goes, let's ride. You haven't seen that? That's amazing.
No.
It's very robotic.
Yeah.
It's like my programming won't allow me to walk away.
I saw. Okay, I thought you were going to say something different. Might not have been Schwartz, but somebody was like, if you get thrust into this spot where I'm not going to do it justice, but have to so he gets put into this slot in Seattle, and it's like part of this elite quarterback compartment, but things are like orchestrated in a certain way, and Carroll has things that orchestrated that way for very good reason, because when all the parts are in place, they can be a good football team. But if you take him out and now you put him, now you got to like lead a franchise and earn $435 million, but he doesn't,
with rookie coaching staff,
and he doesn't know, like,
right.
He's not Peyton, he doesn't have like just oodles and oodles of muscle memory to just be like, all right, I gotta figure out if it's cover 2, and I gotta watch tape. I don't know, but so it just seems like they're like, oh, we'll just put it in there, and then you put it in there, and it's not working
exactly.
so far.
Never. I mean, I've seen enough Russell Wilson to know that he's more of the improvisational type of player. Like, he can make plays happen just out of talent and ability to react and all these things. But he's not Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or somebody who they walk out there and it's like just the field lays out and they can see the paths,
like Predator,
and everything. Yeah, it's
he
just
scans
like,
it all.
They can see whatever path is going to be open and are good enough. I mean, I still think Peyton Manning might be one of the great coaches in a way, because he took that Denver team full of nobodies and who none of them went on to be good.
Don't say that to Broncos fans, because they'll talk to you about how that was the number one defense of all time.
Hey, look, I'm not talking about the defense. I'm just talking about the offense. The Demaryius Thomases and I'm forgetting who that other guy was on that team, but
there was a bunch.
They were just kind of like not anybody, and then I think he coached them up to get open, and they were good enough to catch the ball, and that's all they needed, and they get to a couple of Super Bowls, and that's fantastic. I mean, that's for them. But and then they go on to other teams and do nothing. As far as I know, I might be forgetting something. I don't remember those guys going on.
One of those dudes, there was a white dude. He went to the Jets for a minute, and it was like he maybe had a good chunk of a season, and then I feel like I didn't hear his name ever again.
And I think Thomas might have gotten hurt some. And
yeah,
obviously we've learned that he had some kind of health issues. So,
yes,
sadly. And then they had Sanders for a second, right?
Fucking clown.
Of course, he was actually already good. Like that was more of a big pickup. But anyway, I don't think Russell Wilson's one of those guys. I don't think he sees the field that way. I might be wrong. But to me, I think we're kind of seeing it that right now, like play out. But
you said twice that you're not going to sleep on him, meaning you're not sold.
I don't know. The NFL's too weird.
They could turn it around, right, and finish 9 and
if Hackett and whoever, I don't know who their offensive coordinator, if those guys, that they can all keep looking at tape, keep watching, get a bye week, figure it all out. Okay, this is what we have to. Things unlock. NFL is too weird. I never want to
unlock it, and then like 3 weeks later, everybody's like, "These guys are unstoppable,"
and they've totally forgotten all the shit they talked before. It's NFL punditry is one of the more amazing things to witness.
How
I want somebody to get. I want it to be like was it Double Dare, or you can't do that on television. There should be some kind of visual punishment for every time Stephen Davis or something. So like it's the worst take.
Stephen Davis,
is that his name?
Stephen A. Smith.
Smith. Okay. Thank you. I don't watch.
I don't either
TV
at all.
So I forget those guys, but I know I'll occasionally see these horrible Skip Bayless takes or whatever.
I don't. How does he have a job?
They're not because they're not speaking from any kind of authenticity whatsoever.
Shannon is.
It's all about because he got that. He was lucky enough to get that job. He gets to be the one that actually thinks it through and says things that are accurate, and Skip gets to be the heel, like it's a wrestling match. And so, but to me, it's like you shouldn't be allowed to have that job. You should pay some kind of a price. So there should be some kind of gunk that comes down. Like the next episode after your take was proven completely ridiculous and everybody knew it was going to be. There should be something that happens to you. I want some kind of consequences.
Every gear personnel team from all 32 franchises wring out their everybody's sweat into a vessel, and everybody ships it to the same place, and then we dump it on
anything.
Right.
That's why I go to podcasts for my, and not all of them are the same, but typically the people on the podcast are trying to be right. Yeah. They are trying to be informed and give some kind of accurate analysis because that's their bread and butter in the podcast world. Podcast sound bites aren't going to get a lot of likes or retweets anyway. No. The video ones are a whole other story. So you can come out and be this flamboyant, just like intentional idiot and get paid a lot and get a lot of retweets and everything because the engagement's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. And Skip Bayless never seen a person be more wrong more often about sports, and yet he's like one of the highest paid guys, right? He knows it's his job, and he's like putting it in our face that he gets to do it.
Ugh, anyway, it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's why I stay away from TV. I don't watch.
Same. I turn it on for live sporting events, which I didn't see a single snap of KU today. I saw that they lost by 10 to Oklahoma, which
it's defensive. The defense needs some time. I think the defense is
to gel or
no, like a year to recruit.
Okay. Okay.
See that I'm trying to be. I got really excited. This 5-0. It's hard not to get really excited.
I mean, 2-0 is. I was like, fucking A, man.
5-0 is almost like good enough. Now I want them to win more games. Don't get me wrong, but 5-0 start. Relatively new coach, who's an exciting coach that's clearly good at like getting the team together because they were not supposed to be this good, right? New stadium, and not new stadium, but like
coming though, right?
I think they're just going to revamp the booth a lot. That's what I understood. Maybe I'm wrong.
They're not building a new stadium.
I don't think they're I don't think they're breaking ground. I think they're just going to take the booth and expand it and do. I could be wrong because I didn't really look into that.
Right.
I watched the Harlan narrated video, and I was there. I went to the TCU game, so there was like scuttlebutt around. But I guess I've never actually looked into the.
Did you take your boy with you?
Yeah, he's been to 2. His cousin's on the team.
What?
Yeah, his cousin's the 3rd string kicker.
Cool.
Which is really amazing because, like, growing up, like when I first met him, he was like 8 or 9 years old. This is Archer's mom's nephew.
Okay.
He's like a soccer kid, and his parents are like, he's really into soccer, so they started paying like every camp. He went to England, I think, to train in soccer. Soccer. He gets to be this big kid and becomes a really good goalie, right? So he's a goalie, and he's doing these goal kicks. They're like 3/4 field goal kicks and all this stuff. And then he gets I'm kind of putting words in his mouth, but I think he got kind of tired of soccer, and he's going to Rockhurst. So they make him the kicker at Rockhurst, and then he kicked like a 55-yarder or something. And it was on TV. I remember his mom, like, I went to his last soccer game, and his mom was like, "Have you seen this?" And she like pulls up the video, and I could be exaggerating the length, but I think it was a really long because it was on the news.
Did everybody go nuts?
It was a field goal that was on the news.
Well, then there you go.
and so yeah, everybody went nuts, and he got recruited to KU.
Wow.
He's 6'5",
damn,
220, 230 pounds. And I think he told me, he was like, yeah, they're trying to talk me into be defensive end, but I've never played football before. Right. I was like, okay, I get it, man. Yeah. But so he's like, said he redshirted, and right now he's, I think he's a true freshman this year, sophomore in college, sure. A true freshman. And he's behind the two. There's the kickoff guy and then the field goal guy. And he's behind the two of them.
Wow.
But he's got a leg, like a really good leg, so hopefully. But Archer's just so excited about it. We go see him outside the locker room. We've gone to 2 games. We go say hi, and he's in his uniform and everything. And
nice.
I'm just like real excited about it. But anyway,
that's really cool.
So we've been going out there. But what I was saying was the 5-0. I feel like the recruitment capability this year has gone through the roof. I think we're going to get a lot better guys on KU next year.
The results of this season's
win-loss
will
got to help
open
recruitment.
Up doors, or
I think so.
Okay.
I wonder about the realignment of conferences, like if people jump ship to the SEC, and what's the Big 12 going to look like. I know Texas
was going to leave.
Oklahoma are going to SEC, and so there's wooing. And see, this is where I'm no expert on college football by any means.
Me either.
But there's some wooing of other, like maybe the Pac-10 or 12. Is it Pac-10 or 12?
I don't.
That might be falling apart now. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I hear all these little things here and there. So I imagine the realignment will, dictate, and then name, image, likeness stuff, all that stuff dictates everything. But anyway, I do think that KU has the capability to have a much, much better football program.
It
So it's
seems
exciting.
well. First of all, it's like preseason NFL and September call-ups. Even if you as a player, even if things don't work in those two pockets, now there's some film of you and other people. So I don't think there's been, at least for your eyes and mine, there hasn't been a whole lot of KU football film going around. Obviously, it exists, and people that need to see it, and is shit on TV. And but
they had College Game Day. That was the other. That's the other element. That's a big boost.
That was the TC. That was just last week.
We were there
right?
for that. Yeah, that was crazy.
I bet.
Honestly, though, I think it was we went to the Duke game, and I felt like it was almost crazier that day. But I think it's because the fever pitch was. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This was more, the TCU game was more, there was like expectation of winning maybe in that one.
Well, as soon as I heard college, I was like, that guaranteed loss. Like, that'll just be how that goes.
So close, though.
I know.
It's hard to say we could have won.
But back to the,
gone out, but yeah.
Not only is, and I could be wrong, but not only does it seem like there's more film out there, it's more visible to people, but it looks like the team, it looks like they like each other. Like they get along and try. So, like hopefully that's a good sign for a prospect to be looking at this program and say, you know what, I could probably go there and tear it up.
Yeah.
And then I'm this much more accessible, or visible.
And another thing I don't know every detail about, but we're not just talking about high school recruits anymore. We're talking, there's the transfer portal now. So some of these guys that are going to be at some other school for one reason or another don't want to be there anymore might come on over to KU. You can do that now, I think, anytime. It's crazy. Like between seasons, you go into the transfer portal and you go through that process and you can just go be on another team.
How long has that been a thing?
Not long, as far as I know.
3, 4, 5 years?
I don't know, to be honest, because, again, not the biggest college football person.
One of my buddies that came on and did an episode said that Russell Wilson was like one of the first to do that.
Well, I think you could do it.
Oh.
I think it's way easier. I think there was a time where you could, under certain circumstances, could switch teams. It's because it has happened before.
Sure.
But now I think it's like easy.
But I mean, we've seen it happen in basketball for years.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you still only get your 4 years, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I just think it's easier. They talk about it so much now, and it happens more often, I think. Again, I'm starting to feel like maybe we should wrap up the college football, because now I'm starting to feel like, I don't know, and maybe that's
no.
Now we're just kind of asking each other questions we don't have the answers to.
And here's, I've been asked many times over the years, how come? And it's like, well, I worked so many years trying to get myself into a spot where, not that I need to be the guy running the kitchen, but up there. And Sunday, Monday, I went Sunday, Monday, Sunday, Monday, Sunday, Monday. And so I've always worked every single Saturday. Like I was never around. I mean, in grad school when I was part-time, but I don't know that I could do it now with kids and kids' schedules, but it looks a lot more appealing now to sort of, maybe I should give a little bit of, and get kind of up to speed in what's going on in that world. But anyway, so were you born in Excelsior Springs?
That's where I was born.
And your sister is how much older?
2 years older.
Okay.
She just turned 50.
Dang.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's still.
She's in Lawrence. Everybody's in Lawrence now except me, and I might go to Lawrence.
Your parents?
Yeah, my parents lived in Lawrence now for about 5 years. Yeah.
Why did I think that they were out of town for a while, and so when they would come visit, it was like they were making a trip? Never.
Yeah, they were in Excelsior Springs since the mid '90s.
Okay.
Because we did a little thing where we were in Excelsior Springs till about '85, and then we moved up north by Cameron, Missouri, to Hamilton, Missouri.
Okay.
That's where I went to high school and everything, and then became an adult, went to college for a minute, dropped out, was hanging around, and then my parents decided to move back to Excelsior, and that's where they were up until about 5 years ago. My sister lived here and there and then ended up in Excelsior for a little while, but then her husband got a job at the Lawrence Hospital.
Okay.
So they moved to Lawrence. So then my parents were like, in their 70s, like, hey, we should move, like crazy. It's awesome. They're just that
So,
kind of people. They don't.
when they would come in to McCoy's and like have a meal, like they would always sit by in between the service well and the brewery. Or I remember a couple times them sitting over there.
Yeah.
And it felt like they had traveled to be there, but I guess
From Excelsior Springs.
it counts.
I guess so.
It's not down the street.
No. And then my dad started going to McCoy's every single Monday night for years. And this would have been after you and I both didn't work there anymore.
Really? What was going on Monday nights?
He started interacting. So my dad's like in ministry and all that stuff. And he's not actually involved in any church anymore at all. He's still a Christian or whatever, but outside of any kind of organized church. So instead he would have like-minded, hey, let's have interesting conversations on Monday nights on the patio if the patio was open.
Really?
Every Monday night, yeah, for years.
What kind of numbers are we talking?
Just like 4 or 5 people.
That's really cool.
Sometimes just a couple. And it was just a hangout. Yeah, it was nothing. There was no like pushing doctrine or any of that. It was just like sometimes the people were people that, I don't know, were having trouble or had troubles in their lives and things like that. And my dad's just kind of like best guy you could talk to.
I mean,
about almost anything.
Yeah.
So everybody seems to know it. It's not just for me apparently.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But he did that. So like literally everybody that worked in the McCoys over the last 15 years knows my dad really well, including people that I don't even know.
Right.
And then there's the people because my dad is such a talkative guy.
Sure.
So affable to everyone. Anyone sits next to him, no problem, just making conversation. So I spent there for a few years. It got really weird where I would just be like at a bar or something, having a drink and talking to somebody I'd never met before. And then they'd find out my name and they would go, "Oh, you're Bob's son." And I'd be like, "What in the world is going on here?"
Dad?
It happened like dozens of times. I'm not even exaggerating. It kept happening.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's great. I had no problem with it. It was just like strange, it's entering your world a little bit. But I don't have any problem.
So how did they meet?
Oh, my parents, they were in, I guess it would have been called SMS in Springfield at the time in the 60s. So, yeah, my mom was going to school there. My dad was from West Plains, Missouri. My mom's from right outside of Springfield in a town called Billings.
Okay.
And so they both went to college there and they met, like went on a double date with different people and met on the double date is all this
that story.
Of course I get it's told to me like some sort of rom-com. Every time my parents tell the story, or my dad tells it. My parents don't tell it. My dad tells the story.
Right.
Anyway, so they met then, and my dad moved to Kansas City after he dropped out of college. My mom stayed in college. My great uncles were up here. His uncles, Excelsior Springs, Kansas City area. So he moved up here and just got jobs and was working until my mom finished school, and then they got married and she moved up here in the 60. I want to say it was like 67.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where the Chiefs stuff started.
Sure.
It was Lynn Dawson era Chiefs and Memorial Stadium, still no Arrowhead yet.
No,
my mom taught in Liberty. She taught at the elementary school in Liberty. And
66, 67 was merger and Chiefs.
Yeah,
Chiefs
Super Bowl.
Come from Dallas, right around then.
My dad bought. I believe he's told me the first TV they purchased was just to watch the Super Bowl. Like he tells a story that when my mom would come visit him, he had this little apartment. And he would just sit around reading books, eating SpaghettiOs or whatever. And then my mom would come up for the weekends, and they would go to Rent-A-Center or something and rent a TV and buy a TV guide and watch and just hang out being a married couple for the weekend, not go out and do anything.
Wow.
Just sit in the house and watch TV together, marry Tyler Moore or whatever was.
All in the family.
That girl or whatever it was that was popular in the late 60s. And that was what they wanted. They just wanted to be domestic, that way. And so, but when the Super Bowl happened,
knowing what you want's half the battle. I mean,
yeah,
if that's what you want to do, go do it
for sure. And they still do. I mean, nothing has changed. 55 years later,
fewer trips to Rent-A-Center.
Right. Oh yeah, none of that.
Yeah,
nice screen. But yeah, so I believe the story is that the AFL NFL championship game, as it was called.
Yeah,
let's get a TV, and so they went and bought a color television. And that was the first one.
Baller.
And had people over and watch the Super Bowl.
Nice.
Before it was called the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So that's where they come from. And I spent, a good portion of my childhood in Springfield because my grandparents and
okay.
I went to school there too. My first failed attempt at college was at SMSU.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which is now, for the younger listeners, called Missouri State now. And
I can't keep them straight, which is what
somebody called it MSU the other day, and I was like, MS. Okay, I guess that makes sense, but I've never heard anybody say that. So I called it SMSU or SMS.
Yep. Yep.
So, and then that got me the St. Louis connection. So I moved to St. Louis for a while because SMS was all St. Louis people, like 90%, I swear. And so I made all these St. Louis friends. I was like, oh, St. Louis seems like a cool place. I go to visit sometimes, so I moved there for a minute, but wasn't for me.
So when you lived in you didn't live in Springfield as a kid. You lived there. No, I would just spend
summers, periods of time in the summer, and then like Christmas break and things in Springfield.
Okay.
So it was like that's some like extra rich time.
Yeah.
So you think of it almost as like much longer than a week or whatever it is.
Yeah. So did they, in addition to this colored television, did they have a stereo? Were they playing music when you guys were kids? Or?
So when I was a kid, they had like the hi-fi, I don't know when they bought it. And this is an interesting stuff because it gets into the religion, the shift into the more religious lifestyle. So they have this like hi-fi, right? Like big silvery knobs and wooden speakers with black fronts and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And what I remember most was listening to Creedence, as a kid, down on the corner. Absolutely my favorite song at age 5. And
that's a good one.
And little frayed records sitting on the floor and all that stuff. And then I also remember the garage sale where they sold all their records and the Beatles records and all that stuff that they had. And it was like secular music out, right?
Wait,
so they joined this church
okay.
up there in Northwest Missouri that then goes, no secular music. That's not allowed anymore, right? So for a long time in my childhood, it was like the only music I'd hear is like in restaurants and malls and stuff. Like some of the stuff that's real familiar to me, that's what it's from. Is like just hearing it in the wild, not because I could actually sit down and listen to it. In the wild. But then I had some of my rebellious times, like I was still in Excelsior Springs. My friend Michael and I had a little tape player. And we had, it was like summer of '84, and we had Thriller and Purple Rain.
Nice.
And we listened to those, just like walking around the neighborhood, going into the wooded area by the neighborhood and listening to music I wasn't supposed to be listening to, I could go on about like this is a whole journey for the forbidden fruit of secular music, So I did like some Christian music growing up, like Christian rock stuff that was like focused, even some really stuff that would probably make my hair...
like White
stuff
Lion
was like, oh my god,
Mr.
I can't believe
Mister,
or like Carmen, you know who that is? That he would do these big like evangelical shows, like at Kemper and stuff. They were massive.
Wow.
So there were the big youth evangelical things with music, just stuff that. But I would eat up anything, and of course I was a kid, and if my friends were doing it, I would go along. Michael W. Smith, crap like that. But then later, my sister's a little older, so she starts getting out of the house, starts talking to me about In Excess, things like that.
Nice.
And then, we would, so if mom would leave us at home alone, which it started happening because my sister was old enough to babysit me, we'd listen to whatever we wanted. She would have stuff. And then it became, for me, like the most rebellious thing I would do. And I think it was kind of, and this will get us into one of the albums we're going to talk about. I would have these Christian rock tapes, right? And if you remember how tapes worked, like if you bought a tape from a record store, they would knock the tabs out of the top, right? The little holes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was supposed to, they had the tabs in them.
Yes.
So that if you put it in a recorder, the little knob wouldn't be able to go into so you could record over it. So I would put tape over those so that the thing would record.
Oh.
And I had a dual cassette tape player. And so I would my method was I would use whatever money I had and send it to Columbia House and BMG and be in their tape clubs. I would sign up. One of them, I don't remember which one was which. One of them was rap and the other one was alternative. So this is when I'm early in high school. And our mailbox was at the end of this like half-mile long gravel road. So I was like, hey, Mom, don't worry about the mail. I'll get the mail. That'll be one of my chores. Oh, that's great. So I would go down there and check the mail every day. And every month they would just send you a random tape of whatever genre you picked. So I would get these rap tapes. I'd get these so I remember Jane's Addiction coming in the mail. I remember Red Man, this like first album coming in the mail. All this like rap stuff.
Reggae? The rapper.
The rapper
okay.
Red Man.
Okay.
And so then I'm like, come home and here's the mail and tapes are in my pocket. And then I would go dubbed those tapes over to the Christian rock tape. So I would record over the Christian rock tape with each side of the secular tape, rap tape, and then if they looked in my Walkman, it looked like I was listening.
She's crafty.
So I had a whole lot. But one of those albums was Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory.
Okay.
Right? So that comes in the mail. Never even heard of them. So that's the other thing about this. When Redman came, I never heard of Redman. I had no idea.
Right.
Occasionally, if I could get to the Tape World or Camelot or something in the mall, and my parents weren't around, they let me roam.
Was there a mall in Excelsior?
No, we would go to Metro North Mall in North Kansas City, or sometimes St. Joe.
Wow.
To a mall there, because that was maybe technically closer, but
Sure.
Metro North was the mall I grew up on, between both Excelsior Springs and Northwest.
Good memories, fun times.
Adore Metro, miss it. Wish it was still there.
Right.
Went there. I whenever you could still go walk around there and there was no stores in there. I even went, Patrick Kraft and I went in there and walked around one time because it was like, he grew up there in North Kansas City too. So anyway, I had to learn about rap music all on my own.
That's insane.
Because believe me, it was frowned upon by everybody.
Well,
not only in the church I went to, but in everybody in the town. You know, nobody. It was bad music, right?
So I mean, are you like headphones?
Yep,
like
those little foamy
Walkman
headphones.
Okay.
Or if mom and dad's out of the house, let the speakers go.
Yeah.
And then when I got to drive, now once the car came in, it was so much freedom.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy.
That was
and you
where
stuck with it.
Rap.
You were with.
It's a big deal.
Rap is very appealing, very fascinating, very fun, very lovable. Like you can, but without one other person to
it took a while to find somebody.
Well, but I'm assuming during that while you're continuing to log, and it must have been amazing when you found a person. You'd be like, "Oh my God, I got to talk to you about this."
There was like this one guy in my high school who was sort of like one of those quiet. He wasn't like anybody else, and he wasn't in any group, clique, or whatever. And I didn't really know him, but then I met this one guy who kind of was buddies with him, and it turned out this guy's mom, or dad, lived in Kansas City. So on weekends he would go to Kansas City, and there were kids in the neighborhood or whatever he knew, and he started learning about rap from the city folk, you know.
Sure.
And so he started telling me. I can remember the one bit of advice he gave me was, if it's got that parental advisory sticker on it, it's good. Just remember that. He told me that, and I was like, I took that to heart. I even had that T-shirt, you know.
No kidding.
A little later,
yeah.
But that, like Woody Harrelson wears that in White Men Can't Jump or something.
Have you ever watched any of the footage from those hearings with Zappa?
Yeah. Oh, especially like Dee Snider.
Dee Snider and John Denver. I mean,
good stuff.
Anyway,
I recently watched the Dee Snider because somebody was trying to attack Dee Snider on Twitter, and of course, part of it is because certain people co-opt his song, we're not going to take it song, and he always holds back nothing in lambasting those people for doing that. And
you missed the thing
recently. You understand I'm talking about you, and so occasionally, then through Twitter and so on, you'll see these footage of him, at those hearings, and I've seen him on Zappa lots of times. I remember Zappa from the time. I don't remember Zappa from the time, but Zappa.
There's lots
on talk shows and stuff too. Yeah.
Well, for sure, but specifically from the PMRC hearings, he showed up. He looked like a lawyer, like a briefcase.
I know he was
stacks.
So different in the 80s.
Well, but he was so prepared.
Yeah.
And there's lots of footage where the politicians are like, "Fuck, get this guy out of here."
Yeah.
And he just relentless. Oh God, it's so good.
No, there's been a few little bits from talk shows and things I've seen where he would just sitting in a chair, suit on, just like all the other more political
Winston's
type of guy, and just able to come back on everything that they're saying. It was great. But yeah, so that during that time, of course, we hated Tipper Gore and all that, So anyway, during that time, so Low End Theory was one of the big ones. It shows up in the mail. I've never heard a Tribe Called Quest in my life. I can't even think if I.
How long were you
doing? I might have heard them on a De La Soul. I might have heard Q-Tip on Saturday or something on the De La Soul track. It's really hard to remember the timeline of those things, but nevertheless.
How long were you doing how long did you keep the taping over charade?
Time was. I didn't have to do it too long because once I had the car, things started to loosen up.
Okay.
I can remember there's a specific demarcation point where my dad became fully aware of what was going on and decided he didn't care anymore or wasn't going to do anything about it. And that was...
Or realized that they did a good job building you. All right. You got all the things
you can make your own decisions about this. Yeah.
But I know that you're going to go out there and like be polite and have good manners and tip well, be a good human.
Well, the other thing about, we can go back to my dad for just 1 second. My dad, while, and I don't think he'd have any problem with me saying this, allowed himself to get duped by a con man.
Oh man.
At the church, which 100% the guy who was the pastor of our church was a con man. I mean, I don't know if anybody from those days would deny that. And he kind of let himself get duped into this like manipulative thing. I'm not going to go into Christianity too much, but he is the most thoughtful person. Like, he does not take things on face value anymore. And even back then he started shifting. So I think that he started just realizing, well, just because he listens to specific music, it's not damning him. He's not going to hell because he listened to a thing. It's ridiculous.
It's pretty insightful.
And over the years, he's become very thoughtful about things and very smart.
Plenty of people
intolerant
and they just dig in harder, and then I think it consumes you eventually.
It blinds you to everything. And so he was never like that. So it's somewhere along the line, even though he stayed in that church for longer than he probably should have, he started to kind of realize, he needed to loosen up. But the moment that I can remember was I bought the tape, the original Body Count tape. You remember Ice-T's Body Count?
I saw him.
The original one with the song Cop Killer on it.
I saw him at Arrowhead.
Yeah, with Guns N' Roses Metallica, right?
Yeah.
And I had that tape. Of course, I didn't let my parents know I had the tape or anything. But then the controversy hit like big time, and Warner Brothers made him take the song off and all this stuff, and people were protesting outside of Warner Brothers and all this. And I remember I was watching the nightly news with my dad, and they're talking about the song, and they're going to all the details. And my dad grumbles about it. And then I say, so Dad, just so you know, I have that tape. And he's like, oh, okay. And that was about it. After that, I didn't hide anything anymore.
Wow.
It was just like kind of like that.
Peasy.
I kind of felt like, oh, if I can tell him that and he didn't go into my room and
the truthful
ransack it, that,
I mean,
I think it's okay. So after that, it became no problem. And then there was the matter of being an outward hip hop lover in a small town, which was also like, it took a minute. I got called names, yeah.
Really?
You can guess the name I was called.
100%.
And
starts with a W, I bet.
Well, no, it got started with an N.
Oh,
but there were 2 words involved.
Interesting.
I was a lover.
Gosh.
And
boy,
that went away pretty quick.
God bless you, Missouri.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we're talking about 100% white town. County. I think the county was 100% white, outside of like 2 adopted kids. And I loved that, though. I was like, that's kind of part of what I did it for, I think, was to be a bit of a, I guess from their point of view, a contrarian or whatever, or just rebelling against this crap, because I really hated, and that was one thing my dad was really great about, and my mom both, really great about never infusing me with any bigotry towards race.
Oh, good.
There was some homophobia growing up, kind of automatic biblical style homophobia, but that's all gone away too. But at the time, I remember being taught that's the worst word in the English language
by your
from
parents?
a very early age. Yes.
Oh, good.
The N word, and so I hated that kind of stuff. So if I was going the other way, all the better, right?
Yeah.
And after a while, though, I will say it didn't take long. Like basically, Dr. Dre, the Chronic comes out. Suddenly everybody's a hip hop fan.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
I mean,
and everybody's smoking weed. That was the other thing too. It was like before that, nobody smoked weed unless you were one of the kids that, didn't show up for picture day for the yearbook or whatever.
Right.
And then Chronic and Cypress Hill come out. Suddenly everybody's smoking weed. It was a really interesting time.
Yeah. And not too long after that, we're getting different versions of songs on the radio, and MTV is blurring out shit in their videos, and it's like, what?
So they're smoking. They're not smoking Indo. They're smoking.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the Tom Petty?
Nyounge. Let's smoke another nyounge. I can remember all that stuff.
What?
Yeah.
What is that?
Why was MTV so stuck on
not having
marijuana?
A pot leaf visible?
It's so bizarre.
Because it was like not too terribly removed from like the Judas Priest records are making our kids kill themselves.
Oh yeah,
And
well,
they
I
don't
grew
want-
up in that. Yeah.
Well, they don't. MTV's like, we don't want to be. You're making our kids smoke pot. You know.
I guess.
I don't know. I just am totally throwing a blind
One
dart.
of the weirdest like prejudices we've ever had as a country, like marijuana, and we don't have to get into
Well, it was
all of it.
mo-
But it
money.
was like it was all
It was
just
money.
money and
DuPont
political power,
Yeah.
and Hearst
Yep.
not wanting to buy people to buy paper pulp and not hemp pulp to make their papers.
Well,
'Cause he owned paper mills and trees, not hemp.
Yeah.
You know, however
But
it
also, alcohol manufacturers were afraid, I think, to lose sales
yeah, for sure.
because you drink a little less if you toke the dubs. I
or
don't know.
there's some sense of for some reason there's some sense of competition there. I don't believe it exists. I believe people do plenty of drinking and smoking all together. I don't know what they're
For
thinking.
sure now.
Well,
Sure
yeah.
now.
But and that was the other thing. You know, it's interesting you bring up MTV. We didn't have it.
Right.
Even if not only did I not have it, my town did not have it. You had to have a satellite dish to get it. Yeah, so only a few of the rich kids that lived, and typically they lived in the country, outside of the town where you could have a big dish. And so I didn't know. I didn't see
Pull
Rap
into their
City or
yard and it
anything,
looks
right?
like a Star Wars set. This big thing in the
Just
yard.
and you have to go out and move it somehow or whatever. And it was so we were all stunted musically because we weren't getting the new stuff from MTV. And then I met a guy in high school. So I'm like a sophomore in high school or junior, I think, actually. So I'm fully a hip hop fan at this point, but I'm still a self-taught guy. And then I meet this guy from a nearby town who has a satellite dish, who's also a hip hop fan. And it's like, come over to my house. So like summer vacation, me and my buddy would drive over to his house and watch Rap City on BET or Yo MTV Raps.
Yeah, okay.
Suddenly it's all, I get to see it now. I can see Tribe Called Quest and Public Enemy. Public Enemy, I remember them on Saturday Night Live as well. It was a big moment. So all that formative stuff like built my hip hop fandom. And I mean, the reason why I handed Low End Theory to you as an album, I could have chosen, I don't know how many. One reason is because it's still so strongly in my rotation. It's just, I mean, there's something about some of the stuff I listened to back then, like the aforementioned Redman, one of the great MCs of all time. I don't want to listen to his music anymore. It's too, I mean, occasionally I'll listen to some, but it's really aggressive and misogynistic and all these things that I'm just like,
me at aggressive.
it doesn't appeal to me anymore.
Yeah.
And I like, again, this isn't me going, it shouldn't be that way. Not at all. It's just me choosing what to listen to from day to day.
Yeah.
Also, Archer can listen to a Tribe Called Quest. He's smart enough to know that when that word that we've been talking about comes up, that it's different them saying it than him saying it, and that they again passing on that's the worst word in the English language.
It's spelled differently than the people that were calling you whatever they were calling.
Completely different, the context, and he seems to get the context. I was a little worried about that word at first because just for accidents, like what if he says that word in school, no problem there. So I can listen to Tribe Called Quest a lot, and it just holds up, man. Like I don't know if there's any. I mean, there's lots of other hip hop that holds up, but there's something about those guys.
There's something about. So they're part of what was
Native Tongues?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's Tribe, De La, Jungle Brothers, and then a kind of a long list.
Some
of
others that aren't as
Common, Brand Nubian, The Far Side,
Brand Nubian, right?
Queen Latifah.
Far Side's from the West Coast.
Well, I saw them on a list that was.
Yeah, they might. I mean, they're definitely in the same. Have the same sensibility. And they were also a big one early on for me too. Yeah.
I know. Trust me, I get how much of beating a dead horse this is, but if you look at what those outfits were putting out, and again, get off my lawn when I was your age, and put it side by side with some of the stuff that is coming out. Some of the stuff that is being made today doesn't sound very inventive. And I don't dive in there. I don't listen to a lot. So I'm really, it's like, you might as well be asking me college football questions,
right?
Because I'm far from an expert, but I feel like the sonic landscape, like those artists back then, they were just filling everything exactly the way that it was meant to be filled, and
Yeah.
just a lot of cool, some static here, a little more polished here, good beats, and the beats aren't ever, you're not ever going to be able to not hear these other few things. Really good raps,
Yeah.
and like fun, kind of inviting feel to them. I mean, it's
But not without meaning.
100%,
You know,
100%.
to me, I'm with you. Like there's some newer stuff I like. Okay, and I'm certainly not going to be the person that says, well, it's not hip hop.
Right.
But I mean, to my old ears, a lot of the stuff and I hear it a lot. Like I go to the coffee shop I go to every day. They listen to a lot of like new rap, like Lil Yachty.
What coffee
Kendrick
shop is
Lamar,
this?
Second Best Coffee, which is a fantastic place.
Over by your place?
Yeah, on
by
85th
Chelly's?
and right next to Chelly's.
Okay.
And I love the place, of course, and I don't mind the music. Like some of it's still head noddy, Like at the end of the day, if you can nod your head to it, it's got value. But here's what when I first started hearing this stuff, I always said it sounds like the temp track to a rap. So like it sounds
what does that mean?
Like you're just laying down the basic rhythm to rhyme over, and then you'll fill in the samples and all the other like nuances and depth and more tracks. And to me, like sometimes the beats sound like a click track, like that you would listen to just so you knew the rhythm of the song.
Well, there's a dude.
So it's very minimalist, which is, I guess, part of what they're going for. But then the rhymes can be very samey, where it's just kind of the same exact like da 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 da. And I'll be like, well, it's kind of interesting for one track. Is the whole album like that? Kind of seems like it might be. To me, I like the MCs. Like Rakim's still my favorite MC of all time. Anybody through that, the Q-Tip, all the guys on Tribe Called Quest, even all the way up in like Eminem and people like that, where it's like it's an instrument. It's like, and we're going to talk about John Coltrane a little bit. I'm not comparing rhyming necessarily to the complexities of jazz. There's similarities though, and I think that like you write something or you're taking something off the top of your head and you're doing it in a way that flows through the music or over the rhythm or even over melodic bits of a song, and it works. It weaves through and comes out somewhere where it's not just following.
Well, there's
the beat,
a dude. I want to say I might butcher this. I want to say it's like Charlie Puth, Puth. Anyway, I've seen him on TikTok, and his videos are and then he's recording it, and he can like mess with the tone and put it on a loop, and then make like 4 more tracks with that same, or maybe he picks up a different thing and hits it. I've seen a couple of videos of his. Well, the other day I saw he was on Fallon, like this week maybe. The clip is recent, and he gets somebody brings him an empty Tonight Show mug and a spoon, and they put a little keyboard and a laptop and something else in front of him,
right? And
he like in 45 seconds cobbles together something that was like head nod and it also sounds today-ish, and so it a lot. I think a lot of the qualities that I mentioned a minute ago about those groups, like not only fun and warm and inviting, but it felt like they worked substantially hard to put those tracks together.
Yeah, well, you'd have to dig through crates. So let's talk about Q-Tip for a second and Tribe Called Quest. So Q-Tip's dad was a jazz collector. So he grew up with this massive collection of records in his house all his life, right? So when it came time to start making beats, like when you listen to Tribe Called Quest records, it's like this great pastiche of jazz bits, right?
Great word.
And that's what I love. Like, to me, that's what a hip hop beat is. Like, my favorite stuff is sample. I love samples. I love when the bass line of the song is a bass line from a song brought in, not like there's great beats like Dre. Dre lays down bass lines like Let Me Ride, for instance. One of the best bass lines of all time, but there's a guy playing bass there. I'm 99% sure. And it's so round and rich and perfect. Nothing against that at all. But I love it when they go into a jazz record and there's like a part where only the bass is playing, and he plays something. It's a bass line for a measure, and they pull that out put it into the sampler. You know, they sample it and they put it into the MPC or whatever it is that they're making the beats on. And that's what I love about hip hop. That's like what hip hop is to me.
Yeah.
And I like that it sounds a little dissonant and it sounds a little dirty because it's off of a vinyl record. And all those things put together, and then somebody rhymes over it in a way that doesn't just add words, it adds another instrument to it, you know? So again, Rakim, the best to me, just like he's like the Coltrane of emceeing. And that's hip hop to me. And I think there are still people, I don't want to say that there aren't people still doing this. There's lots of people still doing all that stuff.
Yes.
But what I hear more is the other thing.
Yep.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to condemn a generation of people because look what I had to go through just to listen to rap music, you know? So,
but you know, two of my first notes. One's just a line for the. I mean, great opening track.
Mm-hmm.
before I had status and before I had a pager, like you legit like had to earn both of those things. And now I feel like
I had a pager. I didn't earn it.
Oh, really?
I got a pager just for it's certainly. I'll admit it now. I had a pager just as it was like a piece of
prop.
Jewelry.
Nice.
You know?
Okay.
I mean, look, it helped me get a hold of some friends sometimes, but I didn't need a pager.
No.
It's ridiculous. I'm mildly ashamed of it now.
I think like legitimately having status pre-internet, like that was. You didn't just wake up one morning with that.
No.
Oh, my shit went viral, and now everybody wants to see, what I have to say. And a pager, I mean, typically wasn't free.
No,
and like there were people that needed to get a hold of you somewhat regularly. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
yeah, he's got a pager, so the guys from De La can get a hold of him to come to the recording session to be on the record because he's so good.
Yeah.
And like that's what you're talking about, the status, the earning it. And in a world, coming up in a world, the rap world of New York City in the 80s and early 90s, highly competitive, borough-centric, right? So they're Queens, and you got to go to the Bronx, and you got to get noticed in South Bronx where everybody thinks hip-hop, hip-hop was born and everybody thinks hip-hop is, and then guys from Brooklyn have to come up, and all that stuff, and all those stories about how hard it was to come up in New York at that time is also fascinating to me.
Very fascinating.
To get where Tribe Called Quest did, they really had to earn it, and they did. I mean, look at the immaculate beats. This particular record too, I could have picked Midnight Marauders because that's probably the one I've listened to more of the two. Because when that hit, I was in college, and I did have MTV, and I did see the award tour video and watched it every single day. That one's like a cleaner record in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And it has the interstitials in it, which I was okay with then, but nowadays I'm kind of like, I kind of don't want them.
I love them.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I tell you what, I'm
not across the board.
I
love them on that record.
Anymore. I'm not a skit guy anymore. De La, like the early De La, taxes me a little bit. I love the tracks, but then the skits are like, can I just skip the skit? And like sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And then my favorite De La records are post Prince Paul, like the Balloon Mind State, and I think Prince Paul was still kind of around for that one. And then Stakes is High, where they got rid of because Prince Paul was the guy pushing the skits.
I thought Stakes is High was there. Was Stakes is High in 96 or no? Was it earlier?
Yes. No, 96.
Okay.
So they produced that record themselves. Prince Paul was gone, and I think Prince Paul might be produced 2 songs on Balloon Mind State, but they were like moving on.
Okay.
From him.
Okay.
But Prince Paul, I feel like if you what was it, that album called Prince of Thieves, I think that he put out himself, is like 75% skits. It's like, good God, man, we get it. I mean,
that shit came out in De La. I was like, we
it's
made the
fine,
right
like
call.
see, but not that I don't love every De La record. Don't get me well, every one of them between
De La Soul is Dead was not very
skitty.
Okay.
But some of the tracks on De La Soul is Dead are amazing. But it's like kind of frustrating, especially when I used to do the little DJing I would do.
Yeah.
It's like I want to play De La, but I'm playing I was playing
digital.
I was playing digital track, digital files. Yeah. So it's like, how do I got to cut this out to get, and it was like hard to do.
Yeah.
And I could only imagine what some of the vinyl DJs were like, man, I got to drop the needle right here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. But all this, so
they
Low End Theory is nice and clean. Or it's not, I mean, Midnight Marauders is cleaner, but with the little interstitials. Low End Theory, not so much of the interstitial stuff, and Dirty. Like it's weird, like rhythmically strange. The different tracks it has like an odd flow to it, and I really enjoy that about it. It feels a little bit like a jazz record in that sense.
Well, also by the time in my opinion, by the time you get to Midnight Marauders, if you're consuming in a relatively timely fashion as to when the records are coming out, if you're consuming them, they, by the time Midnight Marauders come out, they know who they are really well now, and so do we. So it feels very, very Tribe.
Yeah.
Low End Theory, and even People's Instinctive, and like all that's sort of like
searching a little bit.
Yeah, and it works. It's good. Not to say that this is better and this is worse, but I think it translates.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then Beats, Rhymes, and Life is a very modern, for the time, modern record. Like I always felt like they were using JD was producing some of those early before anybody knew who he was, and it was like very specific.
JD is
like Jay Dilla. He came to be known.
Okay. Yeah.
He did stuff with the Far Side back then. He did stuff
Yes,
with them. Kind of wasn't known. I actually didn't even know who he was until I heard. Oh man, it's been so long since I've listened to him. The Detroit outfit that he produced for. What is wrong with me? I can't remember him now. This is a brain fart thing because I really should know who they right off the top of my head. But anyway, that was where it was like, oh my god, these beats are so insane. The MCs were okay. That record was much more about the beats, and I was starting to get more like where I was hanging around in hip hop circles and Lawrence and so on. So those guys were all geeks,
fun,
and knew all the details. And I was like, oh, so Jay Dilla comes out, JD we called him at the time, and then. Now he's, he became really famous with Donuts and all that stuff, but he did some beats on that, and then Q-Tip's doing beats, and all these Beats, Rhymes, and Life's a great record, but it sounds a little commercial, maybe is the word I'm looking for.
Well, I was 6 total records for Tribe, and my note about the discography is that I need to revisit Beats, Rhymes, and Life because for whatever reason, I just the title of that record is familiar to me, but it's like an empty file, and I'll probably recognize it but it's the least listened to, except for We Got It From Here. Thank You for Your Service from 2016, which I've never listened to.
It's really good.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay.
I was shocked at how good it was.
Okay.
And some of it, it just has these big, dense, rich beats.
Nice.
And then some guest performances that are really great too.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah, Andre 2000 shows up on one, and it's really. And I love Outkast. I love everything they've done, and they've kind of ventured almost out of the hip hop zone in a way. Like they just do their own thing. It's just this is Outkast music. I don't even know if I call it hip hop anymore. Sure it is, but you get what I mean.
Right.
And then he comes on and just drops a rhyme for the first time I've heard it in a long time, where it's just a straight up, I'm an MC and I'm just going to rhyme on this thing. And I was like, man, he's still good. He's still really good. That one's a good one. I need to listen to that one again. I haven't listened to it in a couple of years, but Love Movement, never listened to it very much at all.
I love the Love Movement.
Yeah, I should probably revisit it.
Oh,
By
man.
then I was like, I probably was like the name of it was a turnoff to me or something.
Sure.
It was like some weird mental thing, like what my idea of hip hop is.
For me, it like Love Movement, and then I don't know if we're ever going to see the end of the Tommy Boy De La dispute where their stuff is not on streaming.
I thought it was supposed to have happened
November. Last November.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
I got some vinyl, and I've got a couple of CDs still. I think I have everything, and you can still go to YouTube. But
yeah. So Love Movement comes out right around the same time that they basically announced that they're going to put out this trilogy, and put out the first installment, AOI, Artificial Intelligence.
Yeah, right.
And then we got Bionics, the second installment, and the third one they still never put it. But anyway,
they did that one record. I can't remember what it's called now. That's the only one, or there's 2 of them that you can stream, but they're much later.
Yes,
but I've never really. I'll be honest, I've never really listened to them.
Love Movement and the Artificial Intelligence trilogy came out like after I was aware of those guys.
Okay.
So I'm like playing catch up, like trying to consume the Tribe and the De La discographies, And then when they both are putting, I'm like, yeah, I know what's up. Like, you know, so I mean, I think the Love Movement's a pretty good record regardless, but I was geeked out for that reason.
I want to check it out. 'Cause I remember I've definitely listened to it, but for one reason or another, I just didn't keep listening to it or
It happens.
absorb it.
The other one of, I mean, there's so many movements. There's so many moments in Low End Theory that I really, really love, and I love I love the thing as a collective. But I would have to go back in for two full, fresh, recent listens to feel. So anyway, I just have one other, and it's what.
Yeah, like the second to last track, right?
Second to last or last? I forget which.
Scenario's the last, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. So second to last track, and it's such a good record already. And then what is just really
So good.
And
then Scenario is the only
hit. Yeah.
And that's crazy. They put it at the end.
Yeah.
But I can see why that it's kind of a gang up record or gang up track, like where you like bring in some guests.
Sure.
And everybody, you can kind of picture them all standing around.
Yeah.
And, like everybody gets behind Busta Rhymes when he's rapping and he's like pushing them behind him and all that stuff. They used to do all that fun stuff where they were all wearing like big coats.
Yeah.
And there'd be guys, and it was like the guys were trying to like step in front of them for some reason. And while they're
They
rhyming,
get
they're
a
like
little
pushing
pushy.
them back. I don't know why they did it that way. Oh, but Busta and all that.
Yeah.
Super high energy.
There, no shortage of tall hair.
Tall hair, big puffy coats.
Yeah, yeah.
And just Busta had all that energy, you know. I loved him so much back in the like mid '90s.
My favorite portion of what is leads right up to the pause, and he says, "What is hip hop if it doesn't have violence? Chill for a minute." Dougie Fresh said, "Silence."
Yeah.
And then there's a good 1.5, 2.5 of just.
And does it come,
and then they kick back in.
Does it come in on time? I always feel like it's like slightly off time or something, but it's kind of cool. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like it's like that silence happens and then it's dun, 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 yeah. I don't know. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful record.
So when I first was thinking about this record, you know, and you appear to know a lot more about the genre and specific artists and discographies than I do, but I think that there has been, for me, sort of a pull to Tribe and De La and Jungle and some of these guys because there's an element of mystery, and I don't, you know, it's not like I don't know how to describe it, but it's been appealing. So I had the thought, like, what if you hosted a foreign exchange student for a year? And they are like totally fluent in English, and they can write and read in English, and they know music from where they live.
Right.
But some American stuff they know a couple movies and they know a couple bands, but they're really hungry to like take a deep dive while they're here for a year into American music.
Sure.
How do you describe Tribe Called Quest to that person?
I don't know.
Put what you hear into their mind, so they're like, "Oh, I would totally dig that."
That's a really good
because
question.
if you say that about the Rolling Stones, you're like, "Well, there's fucking Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, and this drummer died and whatever."
I don't know with Tribe. I mean, with anything, I'm kind of like, you just got to listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times at work, you know, I work at a brewery where we brew all kinds of weird beer, and people say, "What is that like?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna pour you. I'm not what." I could give you the specs.
Well, you could say,
but you need to drink it.
There's two MCs and a DJ and a rapper, and there's this.
That's true of so many groups, though. You know,
there's this notion of like, you know, looking through the crates and finding samples and mixing things and laying down beats, but that doesn't. It's
I don't know if that does anything for that's too intellectual. You know, like I could go into like the history of jazz and what it meant to black culture, for instance. Like, okay, I only know that superficially myself, and then or intellectually, or like by reading about it, and then the carryover of that into hip hop. And that's one of the other reasons why I think, you know, there's something so pure about that early era or that mid era, I guess.
What's the group
like
again?
88, like. What's that?
What was the collective of the group?
Oh, the Native Tongues.
Native Tongues.
Well, Native Tongues, and then so many of the other groups where it was just like clearly the kind of music that you want to sample for hip hop beats is jazz. Like it just, the instrumentation, everything works. And then funk, which a lot of that is jazz, right? So it's not just Parliament, but you're talking about Herbie, right? Like your Headhunters, like sampling fusion albums, even some fusion albums you might never want to sit down and listen to.
Yeah.
But you could pull some funky shit out of it.
Yeah.
And make a track. Like there's something about the history meeting the modern age, and now that modern age is now history to us. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like there's this evolution of music through that, but all that's so intellectual.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have anything to do with music in a way.
No,
it has
you're
to do
right.
with music as an intellectual or as a cultural impactful thing. But you got to listen to it to know.
Yeah.
So to me, if somebody said, "Well, tell me why I should listen to Tribe Called Quest," I'm like, "I'll show you."
Well, I'm
do.
envisioning like, you've met this person they've traveled over, and you had to travel to them for whatever reason. I guess they're not flying into KCI, which is a 45, and so now you've got to travel
on a road trip
back with them,
Gotcha.
and it's going to be, you got to get all the way back to the place where the music is. Apparently it's not in your car.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I was like, this feels like, trying to answer that question is like somebody hands you a bag of parts, and they're like, build the thing, but you don't have the manual or the picture. You don't know what it is, but you know for sure that all the parts are there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know.
The thing about hip hop and like specifically this kind of hip hop, I think some of it can be, like we talked about, too aggressive or whatever it may be. There's reasons to be turned off by certain things. But when I was younger, I would always argue with people that were like, I hate rap music. And I'd be like, it's at the end of the day, it's just a beat.
Yeah.
It's just how could you dislike a drum beat? Like you can't tell me that I don't like samples or whatever it may be. Well, we all know what the real reason was probably most of the time. Nevertheless, I would still get frustrated. I was like, at the end of the day, you should at least enjoy the beat. Like I don't understand how you could hate that, but they did.
Yeah.
And arguments were fruitless. But
that's
part of the thing about hip hop is like, listen to it and just, I don't know how drums can not get to you,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I want to dive into your other two, but I got to pee real quick and
Yep.
check on the dog. So
Sounds good.
We're at 5:30. What are your people?
Let's see if they texted me back.
You relatively invested in baseball?
I love baseball.
Non-Royals baseball?
Invested enough, yeah.
Okay.
Like I enjoy it. I love fall baseball, man. One of my favorite things is to, like, I haven't been able to do it this year. Find like an Irish pub, get a Guinness and watch baseball, and like on a day like this.
That sounds fantastic.
Great. I did it a lot in Denver.
Okay.
There's a lot of good Irish bars in Denver. You may have been to some.
Yeah.
And you could just it's always nice in Denver, so they always have their windows, doors open or whatever, and you can sit there and drink a Guinness on a crisp day wearing a hoodie and watch fall baseball.
Dude, and
baseball that matters, baseball that has lots of energy. I love it.
I keep a handful of beers and boozes on the hand, but I only keep Guinness on hand in the winter, and I don't put it in the fridge.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. And I love it. I just don't want it cold, and I think a lot of bars keep it 10 degrees warmer than other taps. But I also, not that I do this, but if I were to like drink a whole 4-pack or a 6-pack of Guinness, and I still feel like I have my faculties about me relatively. I don't know why that is, but
most stout, it's low ABV, right? Like
I
remember
four, 5 or something. I don't know.
Wasn't the old dry stout at McCoy's was like 4 something?
See, I always thought back then that I had it in my head that stouts and porters were higher.
I know it's easy to think that way. Because they're dark and crazy. And then nowadays, in Boulevard is maybe the guiltiest party. Everything's imperial stouts now. Everything's double. Everything's big ABV or barrel aged, so it's just boozing up the whole thing.
No thanks.
I gave you one. I gave you one whiskey barrel stout.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take from you. If you want to take this with you when you go, I'll either drink them myself or give them to folks.
Do whatever you want. Okay. I have so much beer, man. And I drink like a beer a day.
Right.
If that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But when you would hang out back then, you would I don't have any memories of you being like a big drinker, but you would have more than one beer.
I drink a lot.
You drank a lot?
Yeah, I used to have I wouldn't say I had a problem because when I realized I didn't want to drink anymore, it wasn't a problem to stop.
Okay.
But I drank a lot back
Okay.
in the day.
Okay.
Yeah. But we would do the post shift. So there was those different phases of McCoy's where when I first got there, it was pretty much the Wild Wild West, and I stayed. So we were talking about Kevin Kim earlier. I stayed there the entire night one time with Kevin while his child was being born. Because remember, he was old fashioned.
Yeah.
And wouldn't go to the hospital when
Yeah.
his kids were born. Like, I can't remember. So this was like 2004 maybe, or 3 or 4. And I just stayed there and drank with him all night. He just kept grabbing my glass and going and pouring me. And I was drinking IPAs.
Oh, my.
And that was like some of the worst drunks I ever had were from Newcomb's IPA at McCoy's. Once was up in Minnesota even.
Oh, wow. Funny.
I ran some kegs up there one time. It was a disaster. And they never let anybody else do it again.
I don't remember you being a huge cannabis guy back then. Are you today?
I wasn't then, no. Yeah.
But today is different?
No, today I partake in order to sleep mostly.
Oh, so your waking hours are relative, like stone cold? Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
damn.
Sometimes, I don't smoke. I use tincture.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll microdose. It just
Interesting.
kind of depends, like what kind of day I'm going to have.
Sure.
If I got to go, I don't really want to be like that at work. I never have. But I'll do a few drops. I do like a little vitamin drink kind of thing.
Sure.
And I'll put a few drops in there and some like MCT oil and all that. And then just have like a little microdosey kind of smooth day if I don't have to be responsible to anyone else that day at
Right.
all. And then same day, I'll get home and I'll be done with my day in the evening and it's like Royals games coming on or I'm going to watch a movie. Then I might get high, in the early evening.
Sure.
But most of the time, I don't dose until hour or two before bed.
Okay.
And then by the time I'm laying down, I'm ready to sleep. And that's what I use it for the most part.
And what is your custody split right now?
50-50.
No, I know,
all
but
the time.
how is it? Week and then week?
I do weekend. No, we do. We split the week and always have. So we split up when Archer was 6 months old.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of fell this way because of work schedule. She
Same.
has them Sunday through Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay.
And I have them Wednesday through Sunday or Thursday through Sunday.
Okay.
So it's like after school Wednesday, I pick them up like this week, and then I'll take them over to her house at 9:30 on Sunday morning.
Okay.
Or we meet in between or whatever. But she lives right down the street, so actually it's become.
Oh, really? Are you
Yeah.
still in the same place where the Star Wars
Yes.
fan club thing?
Yeah, and then she's technically in Brookside, but it's like I take it as a reason for to get Archer on a good long walk. So we get up on Sunday mornings and we have breakfast and watch some cartoons or something, and then it's like, get your backpack, get all your stuff to take to Mom's, and we're gonna hike to Mom's. So it's about 45-minute hike.
Okay.
And he whined about it a little bit at first, but now it's kind of exciting.
Sure.
And as long as we avoid any dogs off the leash, that's his like number one concern on walks. He got kind of chased by one day.
I was just about to. Did something happen? Yeah.
And you haven't seen me berate somebody like that. It's been a long time since I've had, and I couldn't help it, man. When you see your kid running and screaming and crying, it was like a pit bull rot. I couldn't tell even. It was all happening so fast, but it was a big
But if you would have
dog.
been your kid, you probably would have been equally scared.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, I was, oh, sure. Anybody would be scared, man.
Yeah, exactly,
And the thing is
exactly.
I know it was a sweetheart of a dog.
Right.
I know it. But you just got to be responsible. You can't let people get scared.
Yeah.
And, it's a kid getting chased by a big dog, and he was terrified. So now it's like, that's the adventure of the walk now. It's like, I think I see a dog over there, Dad. Maybe we should take this street. And it's like, okay, we will. That's fine.
well, we had the first year ish of post amputation.
Mm-hmm.
We were still going up and coming down every night. And when he was having anxiety, he would go up. He had a series of things that would whatever. But going down started to become tricky for him, and eventually going up was tricky also. So he doesn't go up at all anymore. But where he was laying when you got here, if you go out that back door, there's like a porch, 3 steps down to get to a porch.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could navigate that pretty well. And now He's really timid about it, and I just this week saw what he has arrived at. He just jumps.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
before it was like, he slams that nub area 3 times to get down, and then he's down.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's like that he's just. I'm like, oh my god, okay, we can't do that anymore. The other option is to go the way that we went, to let him out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of hardwood
Mm-hmm.
because the carpet's different, the grass is different. So what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months, a lot of the times, is I take him out the front door and I just let him be out there.
Yeah.
And one time, I looked a few minutes later, and somebody was like in the yard with him, like.
What?
And I came out, and they're like, "Is he your?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Oh, okay." We were wondering if he was. Anyway, the only other time I was doing something behind the bushes, I think I was filling the watering thing, and I looked up, and the mail lady was like at the end of the driveway by the sidewalk, and she was like, "What are we doing here?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "I don't know." And a lot of times I've had people pull in to do an episode, park in the driveway, and be like, "Is it cool if I park here?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." And when he hears me say "yeah," that brings his awareness that there's a person,
Right.
because he doesn't. Anyway, the postal carrier is like, "I didn't even know you had a dog," and she was like, "Do you want to come get your mail?" And I'm like, "Are you worried about this
Yeah.
guy that can't hear you or see you and has 3 legs and would take him 40 minutes to get anyway?"
Right.
But I get
They
it.
worry. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah.
kind of trained to worry.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
It's
But
better to be safe than sorry, I guess, from their point of view.
yeah, 100%.
And your dog, obviously, your dog off the leash is way different than this. Like, I think like puppy, maybe even like not puppy, but like 1-year-old, 2-year-old dog.
doesn't necessarily
That's
know
bounding
better.
around
Yeah.
and just wants to play with my kid. But Archer doesn't know that.
No.
And he's a little bit. We have a dog, but like I told you, our dog is like zero energy. He just likes to lay around, and so he's not used to dogs playing.
Right.
And so it was just like this big scary dog comes chasing him, and it just gets your blood up, And I was just like, "Leash your dog," I just like couldn't help it. And then these people down the street, these 2 women were walking their dog on a leash, and they started yelling at them too.
Oh, shit.
And it was just like, yeah, like, come on, everybody knows this.
Yeah,
Like,
get
and
with
they
the
saw
times.
a kid getting chased around, and they were mad about it, and they don't even know us.
Yeah.
So it's like, just be responsible.
Yeah.
Like your dog's not chasing anybody.
No.
That's different.
But
But if your dog's going to chase people, well, barking is just barking.
yeah,
No bite.
right.
So I don't know.
But you don't know unless you know that that's all he's got is the
Yeah.
barking. But
And then the other thing about it is your dog, like other dogs have to be concerned about other dogs.
Mhm.
Like, how do I know your unleashed dog is okay with my dog at all?
right.
And like my dog doesn't even like he hears like barking and he's like, "What?" Like that's his response to
yeah.
barking. Like if there's a dog close by, he's like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Get
It's
control of
very
that.
strange. Like,
I'm
why are you making
trying
noises?
to. Yeah.
He literally does not make a noise unless he's sleeping.
That's awesome. But it would appear, we very seldom see each other, so it's 99.9% social media observation. But it would appear that things continue to be good between you two.
Oh, between me and my ex-wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We got through the divorce thing.
Okay.
Divorce is a poisonous, toxic thing no matter what. I'm convinced. Like there's going to be for one thing, it's nerve-wracking.
Yes.
And now it sounds like you guys did it the way I wanted to do it. But
Don't
I couldn't
for
convince.
a second
Oh, I
think
know.
that it wasn't nerve-wracking.
Oh, of course it was.
There's still aftershock, and stuff comes up. Anyway.
Yeah, it's just, I think you're just on your, heels, and I don't want to go into too many details.
No.
But I'll tell you the day that the settlement happened and it was all over was just everything changed. And it was just like, okay, now that that's done and there's no more contention and there's no more competition, if you get what I mean, where we literally have hired a team to don't get me started on the divorce lawyer shit, man. Jesus, it's a racket.
I feel
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen a post or two in recent months where the 3 of you might be
Yep.
out doing
She went to the Chiefs parade, the Super Bowl parade with us.
Okay.
She doesn't give a shit, but she went. She's actually starting to care a little bit. Well, now that her nephew's on the football team,
right.
now she wants to go to every KU game. And she's actually going to KU, getting a master's there.
Oh, funny.
So now all of a sudden it's like, I'm interested in these things.
In person? Going to Lawrence?
She drives out there.
Okay.
Yeah. And
stop by all your relatives. Hey, how's it going?
No, but I do say, you realize you have family
right
practically there. But and she went to that. We went to Royals games together. We'll go to dinner together. Because so if I were to encapsulate the reasoning behind getting divorced into one idea, it's that I don't want Archer to ever see the things that happen between us that are negative, toxic, like belligerent, where any screaming arguments, I just don't want him to see it. And there was a point where I was like, this is never going to stop. It's never going to get better. I can know it, and let's get divorced. And then, I want him to have the good things. So I'm not going to be like, well, we're not married, so we never hang out.
He probably
I want him to
digs it.
see what could, like, mom and dad getting along, and he loves it. Oh, he loves it so much when it's like, football game the other day. We're leaving the football game that he played in. It's not my day to have him. But he's like, comes up and knocks on my window in the parking lot and goes, hey, do you want to go have dinner with us? I was like, of course, sure. And he's just so happy and has us all sit on the same side of the table. It's between us. And so all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, to me, I don't have anything against his mom at all.
Right.
Like, things didn't work out between us, but it's very important to me that he gets as much positive as possible. So,
well, I went through that as a kid and saw the and that like I didn't know at the time, but when I was really little and saw it, there was an element to that was like, this is as good as it's going to get, because even divorce didn't solve it. There was it just by the time by the time you're deep into your rap and hip hop and and loving it and getting called things, I'm like layers into lying to both.
Oh, sure.
To just
so you can have
avoid fights.
Right.
So I really wanted to not. I wanted like that was what I wanted, was to have a family, and not have separation and fighting and all these kinds of things. And there was a point, God, he was 2. I mean, she's about to turn 12. He just turned 9, where it was a lot of that kind of stuff. This is not great. And it's no signs of changing. Improvement does not appear to be on the horizon. And so that's a talking point constantly with me and them. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like we're almost out of the weeds in the longing, wishing.
What happened? Because they have a memory of you two being married. Yeah.
Well,
Maybe he doesn't.
I think he has very, very little.
Right.
And hers is shrinking.
Yeah.
But there was this long, man, I just wish you guys still, and it was, and what I say, and I believe it in my heart of hearts, is that, I know it doesn't feel this way now, and this doesn't make any sense, but having it be the way it is way, way better than all of us under one roof and the fighting that would unfortunately be unavoidable. Yeah. And they say, no, I'd rather it's like, you say that now, but it's just so, there's, sometimes people from school or at games or whatever will occasionally be like, you guys seem to have, and it's like, I mean, it's it's a little up and down, it's a little left and right, but ultimately the wish is for the positive to largely outweigh the negative. And so some people, like, they can't, not only will they never get there, they can't even like get out of the gate. Yeah. It's just like they're going to be at odds. And sometimes you see the kid and the kid is they're doing great. And it's like, how are you like a sweet little smart person that's good at fill in the blank when you have this sort of, and sometimes you see kids that are not doing so well, and it's just like, fuck, man.
Compartmentalization is something that a lot of people have and some people don't. I think I have it. I never had to go through any. My parents are still exactly the same.
Yeah.
And have always been. They've had their ups and downs as far as like finances and things that have caused the house to be a little bit tense. But and I've seen them argue, of course. But never has there been any danger of divorce or anything close to it.
Well, you can look at them right now today and be like, oh, they love each other still.
Oh, yeah, it's working. Exactly the same. I'm telling you, it's crazy. It was a bad standard. I blame them sometimes for my expectations in relationships, because it's like, you guys made me think that I was going to magically find someone who would put up with any bullshit.
They're standing on the podium waiting for Princess Leia and you're like, you fucking guy. And they're like, what? We did it all right.
Yeah, and all they did was just be lucky enough to find each other, really, and
right, yeah.
And that's just the way of things. Like, once you realize that, you go, okay, that, it works for some, it works for others, and it's no one's to blame if it doesn't work, and no one's to, there's not some great skill if you can make it work either. It's just kind of, it's like meshing. It's like the right chemistry happening. There's no controlling it.
We were hanging out one time, and what was the employee? Was it 42?
Yeah,
42, and then the
42, yes.
and then the little bench between the pillars was 41.
Uh-huh.
So sometimes, if cuts were whatever dinner service, lunch, 42 would be in your mind. It would be your destination.
Of course.
But sometimes it would be full, so you'd have to skip one more over.
Or was it 46? The other one that
Maybe.
was behind it.
So, but you're at the one that's right by the service well.
Uh-huh.
And we were hanging out. There were other people, and somehow your dad came up, and I was like, I knew that he would come in, and that people knew him, but to that point, I never I thought you were just like hard, cold, and I asked some kind of question about the presence of your folks and people knowing him and your name and the nickname and so on. And I was I was sitting and you were standing, because I feel like I was looking up at you, and you said, well, do you know what my dad's nickname is? And I was like, no. And you go, Bingle. And it was like literally without question.
Dylan made that one too.
But you literally had a twinkle. And the tone coming out, it was like the sweetest. I didn't know it was in there, and it resonated so much that I was like fascinated to think about like your family dynamics and how everybody. I could guess from that everybody gets along fairly well, and I mean, are you and your sister?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. I mean, kind of a dream family.
Right.
Gotta say.
So you mentioned Denver a minute ago. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I knew you also went up to Chicago for a minute.
I lived in Chicago for a very short minute. Like that was when I was, we were working together at McCoy's.
Yes.
So I was at McCoy's for a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, and then like my roommate at the time and a couple other guys I knew. I worked with the video store and stuff. We're like, we're going to move to Chicago. I was like, sounds good. And part of it was because it was one of those things where you have a girlfriend and then you break up and then you're feeling depressed and you just want to get out of the whole world that you're in. I just wanted to escape. So I make this decision to move to Chicago, and I move up there and have an even worse experience with a girl.
Oh no.
And all drugs and things. It was like a big mess.
Wow.
And here's what happened. My roommate and two other guys are all going to move up there. We find an apartment with 4 rooms. Everything's going to go great. And then the guy who was my roommate here bails. It's like, shit, how are we going to afford this place with 3 people? We got to find another guy. They go, well, there's this other guy from Kansas City who's been living up there a while, and it just so happens that needs a place now.
Wow.
Don't know this guy, but we bring him on. And he's a cocaine dealer.
Oh, shit.
So that made things
Does that mean
too
free cocaine for everyone?
Free or too easy to get or whatever, however you want to. So not only was that already kind of a thing, that was kind of a McCoy's thing at the time, too.
I didn't know until like my second or third St. Patrick's Day
Okay.
Literally,
Lots of people were doing
I'm
coke
back
at McCoy's
there
on shift.
I'm back there. I got like
Yeah.
very few, and then I remember like dinner services kind of wrapping, and I'm starting to see,
Yeah,
like,
lots of people.
and then I said something to somebody who was like, "Oh, you don't know?" And I was like, "No, what?" Most of the people that don't have like they can't keep their nose from
Yeah.
running. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, is there like?" And they're like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay."
So that
all
was
right."
happening. I remember that was like the summer leading up to moving, and I'm trying to make as much money as I can. So I'm like, I'm all sped up and working as many shifts as I can. So
You?
I'm working these. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So so then I get to Chicago, and I'm not going to keep doing that. That's not the idea of going to Chicago or intention. It really was kind of help me work doubles 4 times a week so I can make as much money as I can. And then I get to Chicago, and then it's like, oh, by the way, I have a supply of it at all times in the house. And so then not only that, but then a girl comes over to buy cocaine from my roommate, and we immediately have this huge attraction and start dating heavily right away. Well, first of all, red flag, buddy. Like you just met a girl with your drug dealer roommate. Probably not
It's all right.
good foot to get out.
You never
of.
know what's down that alley until you walk to the end of it, right?
Well, I mean, you know that it's going to be a lot of cocaine use. That was the problem. So we ended up having this very tumultuous, crazy time. I couldn't find a job that really made money and all this stuff. So that's when I bounced back to Kansas City pretty quickly and came right back to McCoy's. And that was the beginning of my real time at McCoy's. Like I was like, I come back and me and Adam are really good friends. So me and Adam start hanging out all the time. And like me and Adam and Tatton Brockman hanging out when he was still doing the brewer's assistant. So he and I, we would all ride around just having a good time all the time. And that's where it all kind of started becoming like everybody's hanging out, everybody's partying.
Cool.
McCoy's to Harry's to Buzzard and that whole lifestyle for about 4 or 5 years.
The Buzzard Beach is now closed.
Oh my God.
So
some weird
St. Louis, because
that was after college. That was
but
also short term. Yeah.
Met these folks in Springfield, and you're like, that's probably cool. You get there, and what? Not as cool as you thought, or
no, it was pretty cool at first. So I make some friends. I made a couple of really good friends, and they dropped out of school. And so they were back in St. Louis, and I'm still calling them on the phone. I'm going to visit, and I'm visiting, and I'm getting to learn about St. Louis. I'm kind of liking it. And it's like, again, a different city. Now, mind you, I've never lived in Kansas City yet at this point. I still have never even tried Kansas City as a city yet. So I just what happened was I met a girl through one of my friends at school. And I moved to this small town for a while to live with her because she lived. This town's called Caruthersville. It's in the Boot Heel, Missouri, so I'm right off of the border of Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I work in Arkansas. I work at a steel mill. Did you know this about me at all?
No,
I used to be an American steel worker.
None of the things.
But the funny thing about that is that it was literally where it was because they wanted to not be in a union. So that's why I was in Arkansas. It's like no steelworkers union for me, but I was an American steel worker for a couple of years, a crane operator, and they made pipe for oil fields.
Okay.
So
crane operators don't get paid shittily, do they?
No, I got paid well.
Okay, yeah.
No, it might still be.
By the way, are we good?
Everything's great.
Okay.
Yeah. If you took like cost of living, inflation, all that, just put all the numbers together, it's still easily the best job I ever had. My rent, I had a house. It was $300, or no, it wasn't that much because that was later. It was $250 a month.
God damn.
And then some bills.
Sure.
But so this is when
and you're getting paid well,
and I'm getting paid well, and all I care about again drugs. All I care about is drugs.
Really?
So I'm smoking This is when I really smoked a lot of weed and did a lot of psychedelics. So lots of acid and mushrooms.
Okay.
And had connections in Memphis. So I would drive on the weekends. We'd drive down to Memphis and get like Hunter Thompson suitcases full of drugs and bring them back.
Damn.
Yeah, it was crazy. Crazy times.
This is okay.
I was heavy. Yeah, that was all I cared about between 95 and 98. All I cared about was getting high.
Wow.
And never like junkie high, like never heroin or anything like that. It was that idealistic kind of high that, the second hippie movement of the 90s kind of thing. It was lots of tripping, going to I would go to shows.
My kind of high.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. The difference between me and you is that you liked the music at the shows. I just liked the parking lot.
I'm here for the drugs, man.
The parking lot was like the mall.
That's so funny because, time, of course, does so many things, but in the collective of years that we were under 4057, I think was the address, just a few, and so the collective takeaway for me was that guy's always fucking grouchy.
Yeah.
Now, I was grouchy. I had
Yeah,
plenty of
you were
grouchiness my own.
Yeah.
But I never in a million years would have pegged, like, he's not that far removed from a big little psychedelic where you go to that place because it's sort of the opposite of grouchy. But I also didn't know that maybe the Coke stuff was.
No, that
I don't
was
know.
just that one particular couple of months.
Oh,
one
okay.
summer.
Okay.
I was going to say something about this because I think you and I didn't hang out a lot. So, and I was never thoughtful enough about my work persona or my work, persona, like the face that I gave. If I'm terrible, or I think I'm a lot better now, but when I was young, I was terrible at not just being an open book. So I'm working, and I'm in a lot of people learn, I was really good friends with a lot of people that I worked with there. They also felt the same way about working with me, like that I was a little grumpy.
Oh, funny.
But like Courtney McCoy and I, we came to an understanding at one point where she was like, "Why?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, it's just my game face, basically. It really is. Like, I'm not mad. I just get like."
I can recall
my
her
face
saying a thing.
She also is could be really grumpy and
But
anyway.
I feel like if I saw her say a thing or two to you over time, that she always had that really big smile. Like she's got kind of like that, the puppy dog. Like she can tell you you're a piece of shit while she's smiling, and you're like, well, thanks. Wait a minute, what?
Well, she's like one of those people that we came to an understanding, and like we worked together at Blue Koi just a couple years ago. Like I was still serving with her. Still, I got her the job there. She wanted to work there. All this stuff. Because at some point we came to an understanding that we could both be equally like not belligerent's not the word, but and it was all in good fun, and we got each other.
Sure. Yeah.
And so some people, I think, and I feel bad about it in hindsight, I think some people didn't understand that about me, or you wouldn't hang out with me after work, so you wouldn't know that that's not the way I always am. And I feel bad about it now. Like one of my things in life now is to try to be mindful. Like that's maybe the biggest thing for me as far as how I approach the world around me. And so like I literally take time every day before I enter the world and try to kind of think about who I'm going to encounter and really kind of not necessarily like imagine or daydream it, but just kind of go, you're going to encounter people. There's going to be situations like this. There's going to be situations like this. Just stay down the middle and be.
Here's where
don't have. I just never want to have that thing where you're still thinking about how I was at one time like 20 years ago. It's in your mind. I don't mean it's bothering you. What I mean is it's still something that you can think about.
Compared to
I don't want that.
How much I think about how I was, it's like it doesn't even track. You know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of it's also restaurants. And I don't think it's excusable.
Well,
but it is restaurants. Restaurants are weird where a certain amount of belligerence and sometimes a straight up abusive behavior is tolerated, and I don't get it. And I learned that I got deeper in the restaurant business, working at Blue Stem, then in Denver, where it got real serious, where that was like, I got into the very serious world of restaurants in Denver, where it's like high-end stuff, people, beard award-winning people, and all this. I was supposed to be this great mixologist, and all this stuff happened all of a sudden. And I'm like, I got to do it because I got to make that money. I wasn't necessarily as dedicated to it as other people were, so I was sort of an outside observer on the inside, if you get what I mean.
Yes.
And it's like, God, why is it so fetishized to work like 70 hours a week? I don't get this.
Awful.
And why is it okay to throw a plate of food against the wall just because you're the chef? Like just because you're own the restaurant, or just because you're the like rock star executive chef. Now, I'm not saying anybody I worked with did that in Denver, but I've even heard chefs talk about other chefs like, well, he doesn't even like yell at his staff as if that's a bad thing. I've heard that from a chef, award-winning chef. And it was just like, what's going on here? So there's a certain amount of like, there's this high tension in restaurants, especially we were so high volume.
Dude.
It was
crazy.
insane.
Crazy.
And
Well,
so you kind of get in this mode and you're not thinking enough about the people you're around. And nowadays I can get super busy. And I kind of just float through it. I kind of learned that there's just this like one layer of a person in front of you at any given moment. There's one customer. There's one kitchen guy.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters. If there's 5,000 people over here, all that matters is that interaction in front of you. And you want to communicate clearly, and you want to make sure that you're putting on a good face, especially for the customer, but for everybody, really. And at the end of the day, so many of those really rough shifts that we had, we made them rougher on ourselves by being that way to each other and by being that way internally.
Well, and I think there's also an element of circumstance. I mean, I was, I found myself deep in the business because at a very young age, even before I was legally employable, they're always needing. I was always hireable because I always have to have a job, and I'm always willing to just show me how. 80 hours, okay, well, just show me. So I wasn't where I was because I was aspiring. That's where I landed over time, and so, but nevertheless, there was a very, I stayed hungry to learn and to get better, and while you're doing that, you also still want to execute in a way that like no matter who you run into on the streets, it's exciting when they tell you that they're coming and they're excited, or they came and it was really great, and so you want to just keep that bar high and so you get put in a spot where new person. Right? So you got to do all the things that you normally do, but also you got to teach them how to do all the things. And you're like, all right, that's going to be a lot. And then something happens, like somebody calls in, or it's just insanely busy, or a piece of equipment. And so all of a sudden, you got a couple things. And then maybe you're getting sass from somebody, or there's not staggered seating, so everybody gets a full section and they ring everything in at once. And so eventually you hit this breaking point where you're like, fuck.
Yeah, sure.
Like I can't now, like forget about learning today. There's no learning happening today. Now I just want to make sure, and it feels like your feet keep getting, everybody has a breaking point is the moral of the story.
For sure.
But I'm really glad you mentioned the mindfulness piece because I arrived at that some time ago, and where I have not progressed and been stuck is trying to bridge where I want to be, mindfulness speaking in mindfulness terms, and how I'm walking through life. Like it's still like everyone's like a firefly. Like a couple times this summer, I'm like and the rest of the time I'm out there with a net, like failing. Well, yeah. So it's I want to get there, and all right, today is.
I find it, this isn't one of those like, oh, here's my advice kind of thing, but I find having a goal to be the mistake, having some sort of end goal, that's not going to do it. You're never going to get there. It's just day in, day out.
No,
it's just
here's where I am currently.
Yeah,
and I wish that I don't need to do it daily. But if I had a little bit more consistency, I think I could, so lists. Every once in a while, I'll have a long-term list. Nothing huge. Just it's not like nothing that you can knock out with an errand on a Tuesday afternoon. So I've got that, and just I'm aware of it, right? And then I have short-term lit just to post it. Like I need to call the fucking gas company and tell them about blah blah. And I can have 6 things. All if the stars align, I could hammer out all 6. But a lot of times the day is over and I've only done one. And I tell you what, getting one thing knocked off the list, I feel at ease. Like God, I'm not a giant piece of shit. I'm only a medium-sized piece. It's amazing how much.
And then what I'm talking about too is this God, I don't know, call it a pursuit of enlightenment or anything that hyperbolous, but just this idea of like we're trying to walk this path and we're trying to live better lives and be mindful of everyone around us. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't have a goal there. I don't know if I believe in enlightenment. I'm actually a little skeptical about that. But, you know, walking that path and trying to make sure that day in and day out, you're not leaving trash behind you, if you get what I mean. Just don't be toxic. And again, like one interaction, you can have one. I have many interactions every day, and sometimes I never think about any of them at the end of the day. And then sometimes you have like that beautiful one. Like a couple of people yesterday, I had a really busy shift, really busy day yesterday. And there's a couple of like where I was like, man, I had a good day with people yesterday. That's actually very satisfying, especially considering what it used to be like, where I did used to be like regretful so much. Like, man, I would have this like image of a face in my mind where I just like really disappointed somebody, or I really like annoyed them, or and it sticks with me and I can't help it. And that's why I'm trying to avoid. But yeah, I'm with you too. Like I write, you know, every day, and I'm a screenwriter, right? So, and I follow screenwriters on Twitter and all this stuff, and I kind of like get clued into process of other people, and I don't really care what the process is as far as like sometimes I'll see something, I'll go, maybe I'll try that. Most of the time I'm just curious, but I have my own process and I'm fine with it. And it's the same way. Like some people go 10 pages a day, 5 pages a day, or a certain amount of time a day.
2 hours.
And I will write one scene and it'll be 1,000 times more satisfying to me than when I wrote the 10 pages the other day.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Nice.
It's just sometimes, for one thing, you could write one scene really well and write 10 pages really poorly.
Yeah, of
so
course.
There's that.
Of course.
So that's why I try not to think of things that way.
Yeah.
Like even a line, like sometimes I'll have too busy of a day to really sit down and write. And then I'll be like laying down before like bed, and I'll have my computer with me, which is ill-advised, of course. But I'll like to watch a movie while I conk out or something, and then I'll like open the laptop, and it'll be on I'll still have my final draft up with the script I'm working on, and I'll look at it for a second, and I'll like change one bit of dialogue, like one, and I'll be like, man, that might be the biggest moment in the movie for all I know. Or that might be, I really
can't believe
to do
nobody's
that,
called me yet.
But if I was sitting down making sure I wrote 10 pages, I might
Yeah.
not have seen it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how life, I mean, I think that's analogous, to life.
100%.
Anyway, wow, that's a different direction.
Well,
the conversation went on.
So St. Louis to try it out. Chicago. What was the Denver? What was the impetus?
So Denver
for that?
was meeting Archer's mom, and we started dating. So this is like right at the end of my
Blue Stem.
She was working at Blue Stem, and I was still at McCoy's.
I remember.
This was right at the end.
Hold up.
She got held. Her and her friend got held up at gunpoint outside Blue Stem. Yeah, that was terrifying, and part of the reason why she wanted to get out of Kansas City, right? So, also she just wasn't. She had lived in Chicago for 6 years. She's from Kansas City. She came back, but she didn't want to stay. We meet. We're going to get married. We get married, but it's
Here.
We're getting married, yeah,
And then you go.
and we're going to move somewhere. So it's get married and figure out where to go. So, well, it was before the actual wedding that we were like searching. So at first it was going to be Seattle. Seattle was too expensive. Then it was going to be Austin, and Austin came real close. But then we went for a bike ride in April in Austin, and we're sweating through our clothes. And we went. I was like, I don't want to move to another humid, hot place.
Yeah.
And then she went out to Denver by herself, and she's one of those go-getters. Like, she's on the internet, like researching places to eat and all this stuff. She's going to learn about the restaurants in Denver, and she finds this like supper club. I don't even remember how. It's like a supper club that meets, and she reaches out to this woman and says, I'm curious about this. And she's like, we happen to be meeting at my house this time while you're in town. Come over. You're invited. Seriously, without any personal meeting. So Kim goes to these people's house and meets them, and has this whole, like, meets all these people that are all now restaurateurs and own bars and breweries and stuff.
Wild.
And they're all in this like sort of foodie circle, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And she gets to know them and stays in contact. So then when we get married, our honeymoon, we fly to Denver and we go to this guy's restaurant where he's chef. Root Down is the name of the restaurant. And we eat dinner, like our first honeymoon dinner there. And then when he gets off work, we meet his wife, who's the woman that that Kim had connected with.
Yeah.
And we go out for drinks at the bar that became our bar when we lived in Denver, and they say, we're opening a restaurant. We want you guys to come out and work
No
for us.
way.
Kim's going to be front of house GM, and I'm going to run the bar. So
Sounds pretty dreamy.
It's pretty dreamy. Then we go on our honeymoon, and then we work, and we're making money, and we're saving, and we decide to move to Denver, go out and find a place. We move out there, and as soon as we get there, they are having a baby, and they're going to have to wait a year to open the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
So suddenly we're like in this no man's land of job. We're like walking dogs, and we're like really worried.
Oh, wow.
Savings is running out.
Sure.
Hard to find a job in the restaurant business because it's, as you might guess, just like here, incestual. Like, oh, we don't know you. You're from Kansas City. And then we run into this one job interview where it just so happens it's this rock star chef guy who everybody loves is opening his own place, and they specifically do not want to hire the same old people. They want people from around all different places. So they hire us at this place. God, this is one of those long stories, but this guy's amazing. His name's Justin Brunson. He's an amazing chef. He ran a place called, he had a place called Old Major later.
Okay.
It was a big restaurant in Denver for a while. He does butcher stuff now. Anyway, he's been on TV. He's like one of those chef guys. And he's this big, you would love him. He's a big hippie.
Okay.
You guys would go to shows together.
All right.
Big fish guy and all that stuff.
All right.
And he was the sweetest teddy bear of a man.
There's that grump sneaking out for a second.
No. I'm like 100% like the biggest teddy bear hippie of a man. So we started this restaurant, and it's almost too good to be true. And I'm like made the head of the cocktail. I'm the head bartender. I'm the head of the cocktail program, of which I barely know about. I bullshitted my way, but
Good for you.
I bullshitted my way into being good at it. I was actually pretty good at it. And so, but it turns out the guy who was the owner, the guy who was the money man, didn't have any money.
Oh no.
And he like locks the door. Like all the chefs walk out because they're not going to get paid. He locks the doors. We're suddenly without a job. But the good news was that everybody ate at that place while it was open. And I and Kim and almost everybody else that worked there got job offers immediately from all the other places. We got like poached because like that restaurant's so amazing. And this one guy was like, I loved your cocktails. Come work for me.
Sweet.
And then finally, after a while, making enough money to get by.
You know, I've just bullshitted my way through that.
I just totally bullshitted my way. You know what? Most of those guys have bullshitted their way.
At some point.
And then eventually you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know? So I worked there, and then we do finally open the other restaurant where like it took a while. We built it out ourselves. A little place called the Populist. Okay. And I was the head bartender, head of the cocktail, except for wine, head of beverages. And it was going great. And Archer's born. We get the funniest thing about that is like we had this other job, this first job, and we're like, things are going good. Let's have a baby. And then immediately the place closes like, shoot, I hope we are having a baby. And yes, we were.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's born, and we opened this new restaurant, and everything's great, and I'm getting paid really well there, and it's really popular. Really popular place.
You both are working there?
No, I mean she helped with hiring. She did some things there, but at this point she's new mom.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I'm making enough money that we're going to be okay
in Denver.
And then, and I'm right, and also I'm in the best shape of my life. I ride my bike everywhere. Kim's basically the one driving the car, and I'm riding my bike all over town. And so I get off work one night, and I'm riding my bike home, and a cab runs a stop sign and crushes me. Like, I don't know if I saw you during this time. I got crushed by a cab.
You were gone, and I heard about it.
Okay.
And then some time passed, and then you were back.
Yeah, we had to come back.
Well, and it was clear that it was a shitty deal. I couldn't remember right today if it was Chicago or out there.
It was Denver, yeah.
But I remember, like, you got kind of fucked up, didn't you?
Yeah, I broke a bunch of bones, and that was okay. And then a spinal injury reared its head after a couple of weeks, maybe a couple, even like a whole month.
Was the case still
where it
open?
was just like, and yeah, so the cab company was paying my lost wages and all this stuff. And then when the spinal thing happened, it was face melting pain. Like I couldn't sit straight. I couldn't lay down. I had the breastfeeding pillow.
Back shit is the worst.
Like this, and I could only sleep sitting up, and it was bad. And they denied it. They denied. They said, no, that's not our fault. That's from something else. Cut off everything, and that's why we had to move back to Kansas City. We had no way to make money. Yeah. So I sued them, and I won.
Oh, really?
Well, they had to settle.
Right.
It was one of those things where it's like went on and on. I had to move back here. But that's the divorce starts, where the breakup happens. It's like, we're moving back to Kansas City, but we go separate ways when we get here.
Oh, like
And
so it wasn't great before the bike thing.
yeah, there
happened?
was already some friction and things,
how
but
old
this
is
was
he?
really, he's 6 months old.
Okay.
And so it's like, well, we're going back to Kansas City. We both find places to crash in Midtown so we can continue like exchanging Archer, because our parents lived in her parents in Raymore and mine in Excelsior, and it was like, well, that's not going to work. So I'm living with Patrick.
Okay.
And
And
just kind of like
having
I'm still
Archer
wearing a boot
half the time?
Yeah, and I would have to take care of him by myself with this boot on my ankle and my neck all messed up. I finally fixed the neck thing, sort of like at least got to where I could lay down by going to the swimming pool and just kind of like messing around. So anyway, that's how that all went down. So Archer was born in Denver, and I tell my joke, of course, is that like, oh, people are like, oh, you lived in Denver, why'd you move? I was like, I didn't want to risk him being a Broncos fan.
I mean,
it was just like, no.
Immediate automatic Father of the Year pin right on the lapel. I mean,
had to get out of that. Yeah, but yeah. So that was that's the Denver story. And the thing is I was telling you, like, I got so deep in the restaurant business there. Like I'm working like 60 some hours a week, opening a restaurant, and I really cared. I mean, I liked it. Okay.
Totally never would have guessed that would be the path that you would land.
I didn't want
carrying
it to be.
And doing all those hours.
I didn't want it to be,
because I thought there was an unspoken similarity. I said like I was hireable, and I just all of a sudden I did these years, and I kind of rose, with experience and other skills, but the whole time the primary voice that I'm ignoring is the one going, what the fuck are you?
Oh, I know, me too. Yeah.
And it completely unmerited and undeserved part of that voice is, you're better than this, or you're smarter than, or whatever it is, I don't know. And that doesn't mean that I'm looking out at my colleagues saying I'm better than him and her and blah, blah, blah. But like, this isn't, I was just supposed to wash dishes for 25 hours a week to get through high school, and then whatever, cook my way through college. And then, like, that's when you, a job, house, wife, kid, that's when all the things start happening, right? But no, it just 20s become 30s, and it's like, fuck, man. Like, I don't, that was too young to know, but that was not the voice to be ignoring or looking the other way for. And I think that
I was going to say, it's a blessing. This getting hit by the cab was a blessing in disguise thing.
Wild.
Because it knocked me out of that world. I did not want to be in that world.
Figuratively and literally.
The thing about, so I made my bones there making cocktails, right? And it's a creative endeavor. So it tapped that. And then you get adulation for it if get good at it.
You're checking a lot of boxes.
I was getting people saying, "Oh, you make the best old fashioned in town. You have a real specific old fashioned recipe, simple as could be, but it was very specific." And I had all these people talking about it all the time.
That's wild.
So it's like, and having people hire you without an interview because they liked your cocktails. So ego stroking.
Sure.
And then I'm able to be creative, and I'm also writing. I'm trying to write. Yeah, none of that.
No, dopamine though.
Oh, I get you.
Like
get you.
the same way that a like or a something.
So all that's pushing me along. Plus, I've got big responsibilities, and I'm making the money. So it came to where I was like, yeah. And then I'm getting caught up in that fetishization. These chefs that are like always talking about their hours. It's like, I really want to take them and shake them and go, I get it. But man, you know that you're going to die young, right? If you keep doing this, like, this is not something to fetishize. This is something that like should be avoided, and you should be working hard and you should care, but there should be limits to it. And the way these guys are expected to work on salary too, like hours don't matter. And I'm just like, I felt bad for some of those guys.
My last gig in the business, about 7 months in, baby number 2 is on the way, and it's just not doing. Like, I came home one day and she was like in the middle of the family room where the dog was when you got here, and I came in tears, and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, we are barely making this work with one. What are we gonna do? And I was like, yeah, that's it. So I went to the GM and I was like, I should have some form. I should have already had some form of review at this point. So I know you've always got X, Y, and Z to get through before you can pivot and look at a different thing. but get through that, and then I want you to schedule it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just like, who does that? Nobody. I'll let you know when it's time. A couple weeks, 3. Hey man, a couple weeks. Hey dude. And finally he's like, what do you, you're not gonna just like set the table for this conversation and get a raise. What are you expecting? And I was like, I'm not expecting a raise at all. My interest in having this conversation is for you to switch me to hourly. And he's like, are you out of your mind? That's never going to happen. And I was like, it's time to go then. Cause I also, we were not covered. We had a personal, private, whatever you call it, health insurance policy. Yeah. So, I mean, we had, this, not because of this jived with who we were and so forth, but we had a doula. We had a doula for both kids, but we had a home birth and a doula here. Mm-hmm. And he was born like, I mean, it sounds silly, but like right around 420. Mm-hmm. And as the clock was ticking 6 o'clock, the doula and the midwife were exiting. Okay. And there was not a single trace of evidence that anybody had ever been here. And it was weird. It was like, and I remember being like, I guess I'm going to go put on a pot of coffee and start calling people. Yeah. Because you're not waiting for doctors and nurses and people to come. You're at home in your own room. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, man, this is, I can't anymore. It's just not doable to be here. I mean, even like 65, is like, it's not 80, but it's still a lot. And then if you roll into 70, it's like, dude, there's one ending to this story, and it's everybody at my funeral. Right. Anyway. So I'm super fascinated by the inclusion of Giant Steps. Okay. John Coltrane, 1960. Before we get into that, one of my I'm not like trained to be a creep or anything, but bath time for Archer's bath time music is I've always
I haven't done that in a while.
Well,
he doesn't take baths as much. He's a shower guy now. He's older
for sure. But like the world is happening over here, and you hear more and more that people are getting into vinyl and buying vinyl and collecting vinyl, but I'm not, really interacting with that I know of people, like mostly because I wasn't asking that have vinyl or buying vinyl, and you would put a record on display like the Sinatra and then picture and put it in. So when and why did that collection begin? And are the selections, they're yours, right? They're not his, or is it a mix?
Sometimes they're his.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't call out. He likes jazz music. Okay. He doesn't call out jazz. Bands that he would want to listen to, like Devo or. Devo's, like, we could definitely have talked about Devo today, except I had a Devo podcast and I talked about literally every song, and I think that's enough for me. But
where can people find
Devo.
that?
It's called ABC Devo. It's anywhere you can find a podcast. We talked about every Devo song in alphabetical order.
And who is we?
It's me. It was me and my friend Pete Bonavita, is known as Pete the Retailer. He's the host of Star Wars Minute podcast, which is pretty big. Amazing Star Wars podcast where they talk. Cool. This could get a whole other podcast conversation going.
Yeah.
They talk about Star Wars, every Star Wars movie 1 minute at a time. So every episode is take the minute of Star Wars and somebody comes on and talk. They've had Paul F. Tompkins, Paul Scheer, all these guests, like pretty big guests on their show. Matt Gorley. Pete brought Matt Gorley onto my show. All this crazy stuff.
Let's put a pin in,
we could
Star Wars podcast. And
so Pete. My friend Tom Taylor, who does the Indiana Jones Minute podcast, and then our friend Joe Maisel, who just does podcasts with us. And so we're all kind of figured out, because we were in the same circle. So he did Star Wars Minute, I did Alien Minute, and then Tom was doing Indiana Jones Minute. We all just knew each other and did each other's shows. And then we all kind of accidentally realized we were huge Devo fans.
Oh, my.
And Pete was like, well, my buddy Joe is also a big Devo fan. Let's do our own podcast. And he did a show, Pete also did a show called Alphabetical, where they did every Beatles song alphabetically. So he was like this alphabetical
Whoa.
thing has become a thing. So we did all of Devo. It took a couple years, and then recently we did
All of these are out there. and
yes.
audio only.
Audio only,
Okay.
yeah. And then more recently, because we liked talking, we ran out of material, but we liked talking to each other. We switched over and did every Star Trek, the original series episode in alphabetical order. So that's called ABCDTOS. So same group, switched from music to TV, talked about Star Trek and
ABCDTOS.
the original series.
Okay, cool.
That's what, in Trekkie circles, that's what you call it.
Sure.
So we did that. And I'm trying to get back. So Devo, yeah. So Archer loves Devo, Kraftwerk, electronic-y stuff. He likes, it's just always, Kraftwerk was called Robots for years. Dad, play Robots. Okay, put on. And then like any number of Michael Jackson, Prince, all that stuff. So that's what he would call out, So if you ever saw like Thriller or any Prince record
I feel like
on there,
every time I saw it,
it's mostly jazz.
Adult, very, you wouldn't expect that a kid would.
Because it would be background music for him,
Right.
and me too, but it's also calming. It'd be in
Yes.
the evening. So a lot of times it'd be like Bill Evans or something that's
Sure,
mellow.
sure.
I'm not even sure if I ever put, like, Giant Steps might have not have been the right,
Wow.
because it's such a high energy.
It is.
A couple of tracks aren't, but
Right.
right out of the gate, that's one of the things that
Opening
makes it so
track
great. Like,
is-
yeah. So I'll tell you the story of Giant Steps, and which is the story of jazz for me.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
But
But your vinyl collection was born.
The vinyl
when
collection.
and how?
So I used to have some records, and I had a turntable, and then I sold them. I sold the turntable, sold the records, moved on, and this was a very small collection, and they were mostly hip hop records, and I really regret. I wish I had them back.
So do I.
Anyway, but then when Archer was born, I just got in my mind that I love collecting things like music, movies, stuff, books. I want him to be raised to not think that music is just a digital file that you get off of the internet. I want him to appreciate album art and all these things that are like, there's more to the package of music releases than just the music, right? So to me, it's like he'll see this big picture of whatever the album cover is. He'll understand that there's a thing you can take out and you can put it on, you can put a needle on it and all this stuff. And that is very indicative of how I raise him. Like I show him old things a lot and he likes them way more than I thought he even would. I just want him to like, look, let's give this a try. Let's watch the Marx Brothers. He's a huge Marx Brothers fan.
Your 10-year-old son.
My 10-year-old son, even at age like 7.
Wow.
I was like, let's just see how you react to this.
So in a sense, did the birth and initial growth of your child and your collection kind of happen hand in hand?
Well, so then, I didn't have any money when he was born. But then I got the settlement.
Dude, shit is so expensive.
I got the settlement
records
from,
right now.
Yeah, from the cab company. So I had like a bunch of money all of a sudden, and was like, well, now I can do it. So I buy a turntable. And I start going to record stores and buying little bits of records here and there.
Fun.
And then kind of realized early on that I'm mostly interested in jazz these days.
Okay. Did you put any of that away, or is it all?
Oh, well, we won't. Yeah. There was a divorce.
I forgot. My bad.
There was a divorce. I got my bachelor's degree on it out of pocket. I managed to purchase a home. Now, obviously not cash on the barrelhead or anything, but I managed to purchase a home, which then the equity of the home helped me pay off all my student loans prior, so I'm free and clear. Now getting my master's degree,
nice,
paid for by the school. So all this stuff is kind
undergrad
of amazing.
from
UMKC in film studies.
Okay, and
then I'm getting an MFA in creative writing with a focus on screenwriting now.
From UMKC?
From UMKC. Yeah, I know.
That's where I got mine.
I know.
Creative writing, but it's.
I'm in screenwriting now. I still my advisor. They're all in the. I'm the outlier. I'm the outsider in this. It's really evident that they don't know what to do with screenwriters in this program, but nevertheless, it's going fine.
But they're trying to be mindful and push it along. As I was finishing. All this talk was for the upcoming semester. There's always like a new hire or somebody's leave or whatever. Mm-hmm. There was that normal, and then this. I think we're about to transition to MFA, which the summary I got was it's a terminal degree, meaning you're done. Whereas if you get an MA, then you go get a P. I don't fucking.
No, I'm getting
a
terminal degree.
Okay,
Yeah.
but I've absolutely loved my time at UMKC. Are you?
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, I've gone to school there for a long time, off and on, and finally finished the bachelor's, and then this was not something I wanted to do. I didn't think about. I mean, occasionally. So my mentor, Mitch Bryan, who is a screenwriter, and he's the screenwriting professor there, and good friend of mine, and he's the guy who hosted the Alien Minute podcast.
Okay.
With me, always kind of would suggest that maybe I should get my MFA, and I just wanted to write, and then I had a writing partner from Denver who brought me in on a project, and we wrote a script together, and we won the Austin Film Festival. We won the best horror screenplay in the Austin Film Festival, which unfortunately happened right at it was the COVID festival, so we didn't get to go.
Thanks, COVID.
And meet people, and we had a lot of Zoom meetings, but everyone was like, well, with COVID, I'm not really doing any projects right now, or we're not taking on new clients right now. So we didn't get much traction from the win as far as selling the script or being represented or getting anything produced. But
still stays on your resume.
UMKC goes, well, we do want to have screenwriters in our MFA program, and we've never had an award-winning screenwriter. So would you come on? And I said, well, I'm not taking on. I just paid off my student loan debt. I'm not taking it on. And they said, we'll figure it out. So they found me an internship. So I'm teaching screenwriting. I'm doing.
You are?
Yeah, I teach screenwriting through the library. I'm going to be teaching screenwriting as an adjunct. They're still talking about whether it's a graduate instructor or an adjunct position.
Okay.
But nevertheless, actually at the school, actually walking on campus and putting down a bag in front of the class. And all
right
that
now,
stuff.
today.
Next semester. Yeah.
Dude.
Well, I've already done some Zoom instruction and stuff.
Very cool.
So that's what's going on. So that's been like the money I got from the settlement paid for the bachelor's.
Hey.
See, good things are happening, even if they're not exactly the same. Exactly what I was hoping for.
Do you, with this approaching, feel the need to update your wardrobe? Like, I got to have.
I got to get a jacket.
Okay.
I figure, I got to get a blazer.
Right.
Like, so at least no matter what I'm wearing, I don't know about the patches, or the tweed or any of that. But no matter what I'm wearing, as long as I'm wearing a blazer, I'm a t-shirt guy, man.
So am I. That's why I asked, because I think
I'm not giving up the backpack thing. That's because of my back. The only bags that work for me are backpacks because they evenly distribute the weight on your shoulders, and my neck is still messed up.
Okay.
So anyway,
giant steps.
So the vinyl collection kind of just started, and so because of the writing too, I don't listen to nearly as much music with lyrics anymore, because to me, I listen to a lot of like ambient music, jazz, soundtrack scores.
Because you have it on while you're trying to write.
While I'm writing,
words will get in the way,
and
right?
it's just more. I don't know. I'm just more interested in jazz, and I read about jazz. I love jazz music, and so especially because the vinyl collection keeps growing and growing, and it's become kind of a fascination or infatuation. That's part of what's grown the vinyl collection.
Well,
but to go back in time then to Giant Steps. So this is college in Springfield. I meet this girl, really cool girl that turns me on to punk rock. So it actually starts with punk.
Interesting.
And I never really paid attention to before. So I get really into punk, and then I get really into Black Flag.
Oh.
And then I get really into Henry Rollins.
Oh.
And then I start listening to everything that man says. Which in hindsight, I bet if I listened to it, I wouldn't agree with him nearly as much now as I did then. But nevertheless, he was a tastemaker for me.
And a purpose server, probably.
Yeah. So he turned me onto a lot of different things. But one offhanded comment he made, telling some story, was he was on a train. He was on the train listening to John Coltrane. That's all he had to say. And I said, wait, Henry Rollins listens to jazz? So I'm in St. Louis, just visiting. I go to Vintage Vinyl, one of the greatest record stores in the world. I buy Giant Steps, just randomly, mind you. I know it. It's a John Coltrane
cover
album.
But was the cover attractive?
I guess it's like him holding that big saxophone.
Well, but
it was really almost like I'm just going to grab the John Coltrane record, or CD in this case, and I can still remember it was winter, snowy St. Louis, and some of that city looks like it's still 1950, or at least at the time, like rusty looking buildings and all this stuff and snow on the ground. And I'm listening to this record album, and it just kicks you in the face, like right off the bat, right? I'm like, whoa. And then it's this wonderful journey. So it's like just perfect saxophone playing. You got Tommy Flanagan, a little bit of is it Red Garland on the piano? And so piano jazz, now that's a whole other thing. That's really, I mean, I think most of our generation's origin of jazz is Charlie Brown, right? Like I can tell you right now, one reason why I love piano jazz so much is Vince Guaraldi and Charlie Brown, Holiday Special and all that.
Goosebumps.
So all that stuff is in me.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to this and it's like the perfect environment. And I'm like, fall in love. Like I was so in love with Coltrane right
random
away.
Purchase.
Random purchase based on
Offhand comment.
Some old
random
grumpy
purchase.
old punk rock guy saying he listened to John Coltrane one time. You know, for all I know, he doesn't even care. But so I listened to that and then it's like, okay, now I got to do a Miles Davis and I do a Miles Davis. But Giant Steps. So the reason, I mean, Giant Steps isn't my favorite Coltrane record even, but
it put you online.
The impetus. It was like kick-started me into jazz. And I did get really into it. Like I used to have a lot of jazz CDs. I guess I still have those CDs,
sure.
But, and it was like chill out music. So my girlfriend and I, you know, we were big stoners and I was like, we should listen to this, you know, like hitting bongs and listening to jazz. And it went together really well.
Interesting.
And so we kind of all became like the chill out music, the calm down music.
Cool.
So we got like relaxing with the Miles Davis quartet.
Quintet.
Yeah, I think that's a quintet.
The relaxing, cooking, working,
all
steaming.
That stuff. I got all those, and then Kind of Blue, of course, came out.
Yes.
You know, like then I didn't even know that was the one I was supposed to buy first. You know, that's like most people's entree.
No. I think if you dig in quintet, first.
Well, I think that's advisable
because most people do Kind of Blue. Maybe they don't ever have another Miles record. Maybe they put on Bitches Brew at one point. And
nobody.
Like, wait, what?
They went, wait, what?
What's happening right now? Mine doesn't work.
Unbelievable record.
Yeah, but if you won't be able to write or do. I mean, you know, but if episode 33, the one that the audio failed, or video failed, 15 records, and the list of records is phenomenal. And I learned I was like, fucking John Coltrane played with Miles Davis, and then I turned the page and it's like, oh God, this is a whole cascading nebulous of things that I this is not even a surface scratch.
The Coltrane journey with Miles was junkie Coltrane played with Miles and got fired.
Well,
then he cleaned up and went and played with Monk, and then he came back, and that's when like Kind of Blue. That's when it was all like coming together.
I think so there was two quintets. There was the first one
later,
with Coltrane and Red Garland, and then there was another one with Herbie Hancock and blah blah blah.
John McLaughlin and all that. It became the entree to fusion. Yeah.
Yes, but the first quintet I think had issues because I think Miles had a heroin thing.
Oh,
first.
That was earlier, I think.
Oh, okay, well, something got cut short because he was having issues, and then later Coltrane did too. But I'm interrupting.
No, like the Miles thing was more. God, that was before, and he went to. My dad always tells the story. He's told me the story my whole life of how he just left New York and went to Alton, Illinois, where he's from. Went to his dad's farm, walked into the barn, and there was like a room in the barn. There was like a separate little room, and locked himself in there until he was clean. And his dad helped him, like bring him water and food if he could eat at all. But like got the shakes out.
Good for him, man.
That's what my dad
always
told me. I don't know how apocryphal that is. I think that's in his. I've read his autobiography. It was years ago.
Yeah.
There's some less savory things about it. I actually don't recommend reading Miles Davis's autobiography if you just want the purity of the music and never think about what a bastard he could be.
Separate the art from the artist.
Yeah, because there's some like unforgivable things he did that he kind of bragged about. That's like different if you're like, I shouldn't have done that, but
well, I didn't know. I've really had immeasurable respect and admiration for Dre. Mm-hmm. And somebody picked the Chronic, and I'm like, fuck. There's a. Wish there's a few things that
the bathroom incident.
Well, just I don't recall anything specific, but it seemed like a lot of stuff with women that was, and it seems like he's made a concerted effort to apologize and say so forth. But anyway, this guy, led at least 50 recording sessions, won a posthumous Pulitzer, and was born in his parents' apartment.
We're talking about John
Coltrane, yeah,
is a saint.
Yeah,
he was sainted by the West African Episcopal Church, and there's actually a shrine and everything at the church in San Francisco where he was sainted.
Cool.
And all that stuff. I didn't know that until recently. So he's literally Saint John Coltrane, according to that.
That's hilarious.
Sect of that was when he got in that spiritual phase. Him and Alice Coltrane, and she kind of continued on after.
Yes.
She's amazing too.
That high energy in the opening track, almost. I've only watched this once, and I'll probably never watch it again. Requiem for a Dream, like the high energy of that opening track. Somehow there's a parallel to the weird energy happening in that movie.
Yeah,
and then I think track 2 is a little mellower, and you can
it actually kind of starts at this at 11. And then moves its way down a little bit, but the second one's even still pretty high energy. And by the time you get to that Naima and stuff, it's like a straight ballad.
Right.
But excuse me. Gee, that was so appealing, right? Like it was like this high energy thing at my age, and I was listening to punk rock a lot and all this stuff. It's like, whoa. But also what I understand, I read this book called The Coltrane Sound, which is real interesting. It's sort of a biography, but it's more about his journey through musical discovery, right? And one of the more interesting things about that book was that the writer or the people the writer's quoting all kind of posited this theory that he had a 20-year career in his last 2 years, that somehow he knew he wasn't going to live much longer. So the evolution, he died young, and so the evolution of his music all got condensed into those 2 years.
Wild.
That's why if you listen to those records, it's where did this come from? This is crazy. But this was one of the first. This was a major evolutionary record for him, as I understand it. Now, I'm not a music theorist, and I struggle understanding it all. But I know that when he was at Blue Note, Prestige Records, and this was his first Atlantic record, and that in the interim, he started experimenting with different ways of presenting notes. Instead of individual notes, it was patches of notes through the improvisation. So it wasn't writing these notes; it was trying to mentally understand this bigger picture, bigger grouping of notes within improvisation. So it's almost kind of like scales or something,
sure,
but much more complex and off the cuff. And you can hear it. But the thing about this record, I put it on. I didn't listen to it in a minute, but last night I put it on, and just how clean,
very clean,
everything is. All the moves, there's not a wrong move. And I listen to a lot of jazz saxophones now. Of course, Coltrane's the king of all jazz musicians to me, but I listen to a lot of really good guys. But there's something about the way his notes move in between. It's this color, going back to the old psychedelic days, right? Where there's you can kind of see this painting appearing in front of you if you think about it a certain way.
I've never sat down and listened to John Coltrane before this, so I mean,
oh man,
I have.
You should
I've taken,
go on a journey.
I mean, eventually I will. But I've taken in track 1 and track 2, and I'm Anthony Michael Hall trying to write that. Who are you? And I'm like, what is it? What is it about this guy's sound? What is it? What is it? What is it? And I think you just.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's again, we're back to this intellectualizing music thing that's difficult to do. But I can kind of see. It's you can kind of see something happening. You can kind of visualize. That's another thing about jazz that's so beautiful to me, is that it almost seems like music that's giving something else to the listener, as opposed to a lot of pop music is imposing something on the listener, if you get what I mean. It's we're making this point. This is the song. It's contained within this. There's lyrics that are telling you a thing, which is all well and good. Jazz is almost like an open-ended thing for interpretation, sort of like avant-garde painting or something.
Yeah.
And now some jazz is also very specific, like pop music. There's pop jazz.
Yeah.
And even some of the bebop stuff, but Coltrane, man, well, when you get down this is a conventional record for Coltrane.
Okay.
So when you get down the line, it gets real interesting. But Love Supreme is definitely the next one. That's my favorite Coltrane record.
It seems to be loved by a lot of folks.
Maybe my favorite jazz record, I guess. I don't
know.
It's really hard to
was
say,
that because they're so he not to compare it to the Barn story or whatever, but it looks like he was having difficulties with heroin and alcohol, and then just eliminated them from his life.
Yeah.
And then hit this sort of spiritual window, and then so he's kind of like, reading the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible and looking at Hinduism and all this stuff. And did that record come out near that time? Love one
Supreme. That's a good question.
I'm not
sure.
I feel like they weren't too terribly far
apart. I should know. It's been a year since I read that. I was in Denver when I read that book, so it was at least 10 years ago. And I'm one of those people that I don't remember everything I read in books. Yeah. I'll be like, I kind of remember. I should know the timeline a little better, but
so he joined the Navy the day that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, and had I think some cooking responsibilities and some other, and then played in the Melody Makers, an all-white band, but unofficially, because nobody wanted the high-ranking people to know that this black dude was doing this. But by the time he's finished, he's basically ascended to some version of a leadership role.
Yeah.
He strikes me as one of these people that has no problem taking in all of the world, and also has this vehicle for expression. But it's, a lot of us can take in this much of the world, and the rest is kind of like fringe noise, or like the fuzzy when the TV used to go off the air when we and so that's just that. And but he seems like he's taking it all in, and he's like, no, I got it all, and it's kind of boring, so I gotta go out over here and create. So there was a complaint supposedly one night, not quit playing. And so he took the horn out of his mouth and just practiced fingering for however long, and supposedly countless times where he would fall asleep with the thing in his hands and in his mouth, and because he practiced 25 hours a day, and that's kind of like, that is otherworldly.
It's one of those things where it's like, did that man live a life of a regular human being, or was he just mainly a vessel for music? It's just kind of like, it's hard to see his life as being a human. Obviously he had relationships and children and so on, but he really flourished when he married a woman that could play with him, right? Yeah. Like, it's kind of amazing. He meets Alice and they start playing together, and just their collaborations and everything. So took him to he goes to this whole other level. Yeah. So I would argue probably that's more what caused the quick evolution of the end of his life than this more nebulous idea that somehow he knew he was going to die. That's a romantic idea, but I'm not sure if it's how valid it is. Well, I better check in.
Yes, I have good time. I have to pee again.
Cool. Leave the phone on this time.
Yeah, of course. I don't mean to just discard. Great record. 7 tracks, 37 minutes. Yeah. There's something really beautiful about. This is my record, and it's and for me personally, Medeski, Martin and Wood's third record. It's a jungle in here. If you've never listened to it, it is so beautiful. But there's a Saida song flute on there that will.
I've seen Medeski, Martin and Wood a couple of times. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with their recorded work. Right. But I would see them at the jazz festival. I saw them twice. I can't remember. It's a jazz and blues festival and somewhere else. And great show. Really great show.
So you have also always been a dude, and maybe this goes back to the Rena Center and the color TV for the Super Bowl, but way into film and TV. Yeah. And fucking actors and all this stuff. You have it all up there, and I'm always just like,
It's funny about this particular podcast is that, other than the Devo podcast, that's usually what I'm talking about on a podcast. I'm rarely ever talking about anything other than film and television. So that's 100%. I'm confident, unlike my discussing jazz, even though I love jazz and I collect jazz records and I read books about jazz, I never feel comfortable talking about jazz.
Well, you could spend a lifetime being a student of it and still feel unarmed.
Yeah.
But
film, I feel very confident. Like, I can talk about that with anybody.
Sure.
Now, if you were Quentin Tarantino, I would have a conversation with you. I'd feel good about it.
Nice.
All
of your, all of these all the podcasts are still a thing that are happening.
Well, they're available. We did the Alien Minute podcast, so we talked about the movie Alien 1 minute at a time, and then we did Aliens as well.
Okay.
But we didn't do 1 minute at a time for Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection. We didn't want to invest our lives in those movies.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we talked about those, and we've talked about a lot of other movies, The Thing, and I'm trying to think of some others. Just like general film talk.
Okay.
With my mentor, film professor.
Where do these live? Where can
on
people...
Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you can find a podcast.
So we have the Devo. What's it called?
ABC Devo.
ABC Devo.
ABCDTOS,
which is Star Trek original series,
and then Alien Minute, which contains also. We kind of combined these, but we also mentioned I also did a James Bond podcast called 007 by 7.
Nice.
Where we talked about James Bond movies 7 minutes at a time because we didn't want to do the minute thing again.
Yeah.
We only did the first 2 so far. We might do Goldfinger soon.
And you go, they're all virtual.
Yeah, at first Mitch and I were getting together.
Okay.
And we tried to have live guests as much as we could.
Yeah.
And then COVID, and then it made it easier. Sometimes, we started trying to get guests from all around the country. So, one of the great things that Twitter's good for is like a tool to meet people that you could never meet,
Of course.
And so I would reach out to critics. We had some interesting critics on the show. We had Mitch worked in Hollywood for ages, so we've had some actors.
What's your handle?
My handle
on Twitter,
Ingle.
Oh yeah, okay.
I think we follow each other.
Do we? Okay.
I definitely get alerts. I can't remember if it's my personal or one of the podcast ones. But, there's the Alien Minute Pod.
And
is the Alien Minute Twitter.
Did you meet Mitch from undergrad stuff?
Sort of. I was working at the Tivoli Theater where the film classes were mostly.
Right.
So I kind of knew him through there, and then I was introduced to him more formally from Dr. Poe, Tom Poe, who was my first sort of mentor in the film department. And that was when it was more about history and theory and stuff before I got into production and screenwriting. And then he introduced me to Mitch, so I started taking screenwriting class. And then he and I just really hit it off. I don't know. I ended up being one of those students that became friends with the professor.
Sure.
And he and I are really good, very close now.
Where did the original hook... Sorry about that.
It's all right.
The original hook for TV and film, and so was it from your folks or
from just watching movies?
Okay.
When I was a kid, the first thing I remember doing, period, is going to see Star Wars, and
nice.
That was a big deal right away. Of course, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, all that, and then just watching movies in general was just like any other kid. I just watched movies, HBO. Hey, Flash Gordon's on, whatever it was, and then I started getting really into them, like Back to the Future, starting to be allowed to watch certain things like Indiana Jones. It wasn't allowed early on.
We saw a thing last night. There's a new one coming out.
Oh yeah. It's coming out next year.
You posted a picture of Harrison. I was like,
just a joke.
I was like, fuck, did he die? Like,
no.
Okay.
I'm just like right now for some reason I'm like finding funny pictures of people or whatever and just making my profile picture for no reason other than it's really just kind of my way of posting a picture for no reason.
Hey,
anyway.
I like it.
But then, I remember seeing some. So my parents didn't allow me to watch a lot of different kinds of movies when I was a kid for content reasons. But we had a video store nearby that had a massive collection of classic films.
Okay.
And those were allowed.
In the Springs.
No, this was up north by Hamilton. There was actually a town called Kingston, Missouri.
Okay.
And it was this old couple that owned this little convenience store. It's called what was it called? The General Store, I think is what it was called. And or the Country Store, that's what it was called.
Cool.
And they realized video rental would be a great way to make money, so they built this little whole new building on the side of the store and filled it with tapes.
Dang.
And their thinking was
VHS.
Yeah, it was all VHS at the time, and they were thinking was classic Hollywood. Yes, everybody loves this. This is what we watched. Well, all that was allowed. There was no content problems there, right? So we could watch anything. So I was raised on Turner Classic Movies before Turner Classic Movies. Or we didn't have cable, so we didn't have it. But
right.
So I'm watching Bogart and I'm watching all this kind of stuff.
Oh wow! And
then I start watching Hitchcock movies, and then my mom's like, "Oh, I remember seeing Psycho in the theater," and I start hearing it's like Hitchcock this, and he's like the celebrity And now I knew who Steven Spielberg was, but then it was like this other celebrity filmmaker. So I'm like, I'm going to try to watch Hitchcock movies. And then it became process was interesting to me. It's like, oh, he does so many fun things. The camera moves this way. He lights things this way. And it became this process thing. And then I got really hooked. Like I started reading magazines all the time. And then I wanted to see every movie that came out all the time. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit was another really big one, which tapped in. It was a modern movie that tapped into my classic movie background.
Yeah.
And all these things. And I was so excited about movies all the time. So then by the time it became, we have to rent movies every weekend, I'd watch them on Friday night and then again on Saturday. Like that's how it was. I just got really hooked. And then when it got to where I could kind of choose what movies to go to, even like, okay, R-rated movies are okay, I guess. And after that, it was just like addicted. So I wanted to go to New York for film school, which is a pipe dream. My parents were never going to let it happen or pay for it, but that's what I wanted to do, or LA. And I went to Springfield instead, which didn't really have a film department, so it all kind of fizzled.
Right.
But I never forgot. Like I started trying to write
still
movies.
Carry around the joy of
that.
Yeah.
Oh, still total fiend for movies.
I mean, it seems like music and TV and film, like all like that's your.
I'm an
your
entertainment junkie. Yeah.
But like that's the top go-to choice for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else currently in your life that is a go-to for fun, or is that kind of the have you
sports
right?
But that's TV, right?
Have you ventured out into the cold, harsh world of dating at all?
Not really.
No,
very little.
Okay.
COVID definitely, put such a huge damper on that.
Right.
That now it's just kind of like, I don't know if I have the energy to get back out in there. It's tough.
It requires a lot. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Oh no. And it's energy and interest.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm kind of okay. I'm kind of feeling okay right now. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think I need this spark or something.
Okay.
Particular person or something, but
I always think that it'll happen the way that it happened in Lethal Weapon, like with in the produce section.
Mm-hmm. Lethal Weapon 2. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, with the super.
I had to be pedantic there. I'm sorry.
No. I would expect nothing, but super cute, like African,
South African.
And she's got like the real short, like bleach blonde hair, and he's like making jokes about.
And you're going to be the funniest guy in Charmer. And say, well, I'm making dinner anyway. Come over and have dinner. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's all organic, right?
But actually, we all go to the grocery store and try never to see anybody we know or won't talk to anyone.
There was
ever.
Somebody looking at me in the frozen aisle. It was
terrifying.
I almost called the police. Normally, just because I don't know, I'm a nerd. I don't know how else to do it. I go, if somebody gives more than one record, I go chronologically.
Oh, I kind of broke that. Didn't I?
I broke it. And then you broke it a different way.
Yeah.
So we went 1991 to 1960, and now we're skipping back to, is it 84?
Yeah.
84. So there's a number of people that like you hear their name or somebody you got to check out. And I used to hear the name Steve Kimmock all the time.
Okay.
Like, and then everybody, dude, you gotta, And then one time I saw a bumper sticker. Who is Steve Kimmock, and why is he following me around? And I still have only circumstantially like listened to his stuff. But when we first talked, you gave me Minutemen, Double Nickels on the Dime, 1984, a double album.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this? I don't know anything about these guys. So I pull up the record and open up a browser page, and I'm like, Mike Watt is one of those guys that everybody, dude, you gotta, and I just never,
Mike Watt, whatever.
And then I was like, wait, my first reaction was like, must be a different Mike Watt. There's no way. And then I was like, oh my God, holy shit. This record, first of all, those guys, so he did Fire Hose and Ball Hog or Tugboat. Like, what a weird name.
Yeah.
But
and then he did his solo-y kind of stuff, and he did that thing with Eddie Vedder in the 90s. He did
a thing where he plays an album with a whole bunch of tracks and different. He's guitar. No, he's bass. He's bass. So different guitarists on each.
Yeah, and
track.
I think that might be the one that Eddie Vedder's on too. That he does some vocals on it. And they did some, and it was kind of a popular song for a second.
Interesting.
Barely remember that, but
These guys, 80 to 85, 4 records and 8 EPs, like busy.
EPs.
And then this D. Boone character
he's the
passes.
He's the lead singer and guitar player, and he got killed. I believe he was driving his van, and car wreck killed him just out of the blue.
Wow,
this is real sudden. And they were just, I want to say I think they were just about to go on tour with REM. They were about to get a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
Because REM was with IRS Records at the time, and Minutemen was with SST, but they were going to do something together. Because, I mean, say what you will about REM, they were cool. They were like tuned into cool people.
They dropped out of college to tour.
Dude, they were amazing. Oh, I just did not to go on the REM thing, I just did a re-listen to all REM up through Out of Time, because they were a big deal to me too. That's a very formative band for me.
Yeah,
where it was like an alternative band I've heard of, so I thought they were really amazing, and they are, and that early stuff is so good. I was better than even I remembered. But anyway, Minutemen. Yeah, so this is another Henry Rollins adjacent thing, right?
Every thing I looked under, it seemed to be littered with superstars. Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction, Jeff Mangum from Neutral Milk Hotel, one of the dudes from Wilco, Henry Rollins.
Yeah, so Rollins, Black Flag on SST as well.
Yeah.
So they toured together. So when I listened to Rollins's book, I listened to the audiobook of Get in the Van back when I was in college and learning about punk rock. So he talked about touring with the Minutemen. The Minutemen talked about just hear the name, nothing much about it other than how amazing they were. And also how I was, I knew Devo was through Whip It, but then Rollins would talk about how they were one of the best bands in the world. I was like, oh, I got to listen to more Devo.
Right.
All these things. So big influence on me. So then Minutemen, I'm hearing about it, not really pursuing it per se. And then I see the CD, Double Nickels on Dime, in Camelot or something.
Is there like a car rear view mirror?
Yeah, it's Mike Watt driving.
Okay.
And the joke of the reason it's called that, now this is a joke, but it's one of those tongue-in-cheek jokes that's not funny per se. But they thought it was so stupid that Sammy Hagar's big rebellious anthem was that he can't drive the speed limit. So they were like, well, we'll make our album be, we do drive the speed limit and make good music. Oh. Like, that's kind of what they said. That's the reason. So anyway, that's what the album, but also I always thought the Double Nickels was also the double album. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I see it and I'm like, okay, anything Rollins says, I'm buying a CD today. And I did not expect this because it doesn't sound like punk rock.
No.
So I'm like, okay, this is punk rock sorta, but it doesn't sound like the 3-chord punk rock, like the Ramones or whatever, or even Black Flag with the super kind of fast and aggressive.
Yeah.
These guys this bass player is really good.
Yes.
He's playing complex shit.
Yeah.
The guitar stuff is complex but rough. So that in that sense, it's punk rock, but it's also like rock and roll. And then he'll say things like, in one song he goes, "We cut down the guitar solos," and he actually plays the guitar solo. It's like the irony, and just everything about it. It's like this adventure through music.
It's very palpable to me. I love the 43 tracks. I love. It's a really great record. I didn't know what to expect, but really fantastic. It's very palpable to me that they were having fun, and obviously they're good at their craft, but also a lot of really good song titles.
Yeah.
Which to me is like they have a good harness on the language, which that really ratchets up my dork things that I'm geeked out about. But so the Apple blurb, a line from the Apple blurb: Double Nickels continues to thwart anyone's ability to categorize the Minutemen, which
they're categorized. They talk about punk rock, so they categorize themselves sort of. And then being on SST Records categorizes them to a certain extent. But musically, sonically, no. Sorry, they're not. They're singular. There's just nobody else. And there's jazz in there. There's rock. There's straight rock and roll. There's punk rock. There's stuff. I don't know how to describe it. And like they're one of those bands that were, I always say, very few bands have 3 of my top, have 3 members that are all in my top 5 favorite in their instrument. But all three of those guys are my top 5 favorite bass player, guitar player, and drummer. George Hurley, D Boon. And the thing about guitar, me and guitar is I like rough guitar. I don't like clean guitar.
Okay.
I like it when it's a little sloppy. I think Kurt Cobain's one of my favorite guitar players. And a lot of people dissed him. You remember when they used to diss Cobain as a guitar player? And then he blew their doors off in the acoustic MTV.
Yeah.
But it was still rough. It's not like he's not Clapton or Harrison or something. But that's less interesting to me. It's more
he's not Jerry Cantrell either.
No. I mean, and there's those, so you get up into that Seattle world that we called grunge, but it's the Seattle sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, some like Jerry Cantrell, all Alice in Chains were like instrumentally probably more solid than most of the bands up there. But Nirvana had that thing, and it's like the sonic thing, cohesive thing that's still kind of sloppy and rough, and we're going to go for it. And the Minutemen, it sounds like they're kind of in a hurry.
Yeah.
Obviously because of the song links, which apparently they still claim doesn't have anything to do with the name, which is kind of funny. But there's something like we're just going for it. We're just going full bore into this thing. And like you said, it's 43 tracks, and it just goes and goes and goes. There's a couple of little spots where it kind of slows down. There's a little acoustic instrumental. There's a little spoken wordy thing.
Sure.
And then what is it called? The History of Rock and Roll is sounds like a more formed pop song, but that's great because it's got all this texture to it. Well, and I don't know. It's my favorite. I will say without reservation, it's my favorite rock and roll record.
Nice.
And again, rock and roll being loosely used as a category for them.
The opening track, Dee's Car Jam, Anxious Mofo, there's a Zappa-esque sounding solo to close the track. And I was like, wait, where? I don't know where this is going to go. And then, it didn't matter that I was asking where this, but I
by the time you ask the question, the song's over.
Yeah. And it just sort of, I roll in with a list of 3 or whatever it is questions. And before I have one of 3 answered, I now have 9 questions or curiosities. Like I don't necessarily need answers to them, but, so San Pedro, not far from Long Beach, Compton, Inglewood, Santa Monica, or really Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people from these areas that grew up in these areas or moved there to pursue their craft talk about this LA vibe. Mm-hmm. And I think that it would be cool to tool around San Pedro, and I feel like you'd get some of it on you, some of whatever they were experiencing when they were creating this music. I don't know why.
Could be, I don't know.
LA's a wild place, to say the least.
I always picture San Pedro as being a real working class place. I think that's true, and it's a like a harbor town. I think. I don't know for sure. Okay. I think it is, but a little bit more rough and tumble. Not far from Hollywood, but pretty far from Hollywood.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you remember Jet? Are you gonna go my way, or are you gonna be my girl? You remember that track? And then they kind of just spit out that, "Are you gonna be my girl?" No. I'm probably if you heard the real thing.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's
the band Jet.
Yes.
I remember that one song that they had that was kind of like a ballady song.
Oh.
But
no, this one was high energy, a little bit abrasive, and it was kind of a hit. But It's Expected I'm Gone is like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jet shared a sandwich in an alley and then just went their separate ways.
Yeah, there's no limit to their influence. And even if you look in the liner notes, you'll see them. I don't know if it's ironic or not, thinking Van Halen and thinking different bands for their. I think they love and also wanted to undo whatever was going on with like mainstream rock and roll.
Okay.
So there was like a push and pull where they're like, we want to be an entertaining rock and roll band in one way, but we also kind of dislike the commercialization of it.
Sure.
And they certainly were not commercial guys. And still to this day, Mike, was a grungy dude, man. And so it's like perfect punk rock in a way, but it's not so much of punk rock from that time to me. I mean, I love it, but there was like a very specific sound that's like, this is punk rock. and this is not that. But
I feel like
in that circle
they get
of
put in the
people,
punk
like
rock
Bad Religion
genre
and stuff. Yeah,
on the shelf at the music store because nobody knows
where else would you put it?
But-
and that's who's going to buy it.
Yeah.
Is who's looking at
Yeah.
for the punk rock.
But I
records.
don't think everybody that's buying rock records is going to love this. And I love this, and I don't love all punk rock.
I don't know. I'll tell you this: I've never met anybody that said they didn't like Minutemen. I don't think.
Okay.
I really think that everybody kind of loves them, or that's listened to them. I mean, I've played them for people that don't care about punk rock at all, and they're like, "What is this?"
Right?
Like, okay, so I get this CD, and I play it for my friend who is this like guitar player, kind of hippie, a little bit hippie-ish guy, you know, and definitely went on to be more that, really into Ween and Fish and stuff like that. And I love Ween too, but I played this for, and it was just blew our minds. Like we never stopped. We listened to it every day for a long time, and we even did a dumb cover of it. There's like some tape in somewhere in the world, unless it was destroyed, of me. I can't remember which song we did now, but like doing little covers of Minutemen songs. 'Cause it was just infected in our head, you know. And I don't know, man. It's hard to gush more about it. Like, I just recommend everybody listen to it. Like, go out and listen to it. Like, if you've never heard this record, I don't care what kind of music you're into, give it a shot.
For sure.
And especially at least get through the first 10 tracks. I mean, it only takes about 10 minutes to get through the first 10 tracks, if that. There's this point where it really takes off. And one of the reasons is it's hard to tell from the, Spotify track list or even a CD that was just one disc, or the CD was just one disc. But the record is 4 sides, and all the sides were selected by a different person.
Oh,
so
funny.
Mike, I believe it was D. Boone picked side A on disc 1, Mike Watt side B on disc 1, George Hurley side A or C on disc 2, and then their producer.
Oh,
and
funny.
I think they called it was kind of their producer or whatever, but it was called like the Chaff. That side of the record's called like Chaff or something, because they're all songs that none of the band members put on the album themselves or selected for the album. So it's just kind of like, well, we have to fill out one more side, and yet are all amazing.
Oh, wow.
But there's a point I feel like the D. Boone stuff's really great, but then the Mike Watt stuff's where it really accelerates. And maybe it's because I'm such a bass guy. Like
Maybe.
I kind of dig bass forward music. Like Helmet was a band I really like.
They were just here last night, I think.
Were they?
I think
Helmet?
with 2 other bands. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't listen to them a ton now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, Primus and
Sure.
and bands that had were bass forward were always really appealing to me. So I think that's part of why Minutemen are appealing. And then Mike Watt's side of the record might be, but from there you're just on that journey. You're not going to stop.
For sure.
Hey, we don't have to keep talking about it. I just think everyone should listen to that record.
I agree. And I want to just a couple. Do you want new wave or do you want the truth? Mm-hmm. Shit from an old notebook.
Yeah.
Political song from Michael Jackson to sing. And then all of a sudden we hit Corona and I'm like, the Jackass theme?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
There you go. That's the one I was going to say. Like everybody knows that song.
Right.
They don't have any idea. And then a lot of skater folk know Minutemen because they would just pop up on skater skater films.
There ain't
stuff.
There ain't shit on TV tonight. Untitled song for Latin America. Jesus and Tequila, which has a great riff in it.
Yeah.
Our Dr. Wu. Are you crazy? Are you high? Are you just an ordinary guy?
Yeah.
the world according to nouns.
This is where I'm saying, like, it just kind of feels like some guys are going for it. It's like sometimes they feel like rough draft songs and titles, and they're great that way. But it's like untitled song about, or whatever. It's like no time. Let's just get this track down and let's get it on the album. And they made a lot of good. Their EPs are great, all of it. But this is their big record.
Yeah. Well, I just again, I see your text. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but okay.
I thought maybe you would, just because, like I said, that friend of mine who was also really into the album, you guys would agree on a lot of music too.
Sure.
So I thought maybe at some point somebody played it for you and you got hooked too. I thought it was possible.
You have to keep in mind a large portion of the genesis of this podcast is, I wore a cap for many, many years that said, this is the beginning of the line of good music.
Mm-hmm.
So like, no, take that off and listen to that guy and this girl and blah blah blah. But I see this, I'm like, interesting. And then when I sit down to get ready for it, and I see the cover art, I'm like, interesting. And then so I just have those two things, and then the music starts, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
like. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, not on a level of Tribe Called Quest per se, but I a lot of years, kind of hanging in that native tongues sort of.
Yeah.
Not always in and out, but I know the material, and I just came to this one later, so maybe one. But
keep it in your rotation and
fantastic
see what
record.
happens. Maybe in about 10 years you'll be like, God, that record.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
amazing.
So you wake up tomorrow, money is no longer an option.
Ooh,
Are you, I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
that you, of course, will continue to be 50% of a great co-parenting unit. There'll be writing. That'll be a good part of your life, and music and movies and TV and so forth as a hobby, or that's also on your plate. Anything? Are you a project guy? Do you become handy? Are you traveling? Are you what?
Traveling for sure, but I think if for some reason I won the lottery that I don't play,
Yes.
I buy a movie theater.
Ooh.
I mean, that would be
Whoa.
number one. We lost the Tivoli Theater here in Kansas City. We do not have an educational movie theater anymore. Nobody will really let us have classes in a theater anymore, which was so huge for me.
Yeah.
Going to film school, I actually got to go sit in a real theater and watch these classic films and learn about them while watching them in the proper way on a giant screen inside of a theater with good sound in dark room.
Now, you have it. Now you have it. You built a theater.
I would build
opened
like a film center that has a few screens.
But I mean, are you putting people on the payroll to run it the way you want it run, or are you in there operationally every?
No, I don't think I want to be a manager of a movie theater.
Well, then you're taking time from the
I'm
screenwriting.
the chairman of the board, but yeah. No, yeah. I don't want to do. No, like the real dream would be money's no object. So all I have to do is get up in the morning, walk to the coffee shop, and write, which is what I already do. but I also have to get up at some point and punch a clock so I can pay the rent.
Of course.
Because at this point, so far, I'm not making a living getting up and walking to the coffee shop and writing. That's the dream.
Yeah.
But and I think it still can happen. It can happen. But in the meantime, teaching's going to take over for the bartending and all that stuff eventually. But the money's no object thing would definitely be opening a movie theater, a film center, an educational center for film. Maybe a bit like the New Bev, Tarantino's theater, where a lot of actual film. I would actually buy a film projector, so one screen would be equipped to show hopefully like 70 millimeter films on film, as opposed to the digital projection, which is perfectly okay, but not as good as film.
Yeah,
it's just not the texture and the depth and everything. But that would be my main thing to do. And I would go to Japan. That's the traveling dream.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah, me too. It's definitely my number one.
Conversation for another day, but mine too. 100%. You could keep all the rest of it. I just want to go there and like.
Do you ever feel like there's no excuse for us not to have done it already? That like somehow we didn't do it, we didn't prepare or save correctly.
I didn't. Of course.
So many people I know have been there. Why can't I go?
I didn't leave. I didn't leave the country until 2004, and I've only left one or two other times since then. And one of those was Mexico. I get anxious when the hour of guest arrival approaches because I don't want it to suck. I want it to be, and I think that a lot of that anxiety is because my initial vision for what we'll talk about and what I'll remember. I'm going to remember all the jokes and all the funny little blah blah blah, and it's going to be perfect, and it never is. The minute you leave, I'll remember something.
Sure.
But I meant to have a much more concise view on your podcast experience and your other creative endeavors, and a lot of things fell through the cracks. But you also published a graphic novel. Is that the right?
Yeah.
Dodd School.
Dodd Skull Investigations.
Okay.
Weird title. Not advisable to do weird titles like that because everybody's always just, how do you say, like you just did? You're going to title something, make people.
But you did it.
I did do it. Yeah, I drew I drew it. I'm not a great artist, but I did it in my own style, and I wrote a whole story, and it was supposed to be part 1 of 3, and then it's one of those things where, well, I mean, I sold some books, but I didn't get the juice I needed to keep going.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
so it was like I wrote like, I don't know, like a quarter of the second book, but didn't feel any juice. Like,
Okay.
It was just like, so there was an idea there, but I've gotten good. I mean, I've gotten good feedback about the book.
Is it still? Can people still find it or no?
Kinda. If you live in Chicago, there's one copy at Quimby's Books in Wicker Park. I know that. Well, I love that though. I almost don't want anybody to buy it because I just want the book to be there.
Right.
So the last time I was in Chicago in the spring, I took my friend who lives there. We went to Quimby's. I took Archer to Quimby's, one of the best bookstores in the world, and saw that there were still 2 copies in there. So my friend Tom bought one, and it was like,
dude, what are you doing?
And let me tell you this. Archer didn't know I had written a book.
Oh, wow.
And so
How
he's like,
fun.
wait a minute, you wrote that book? And I was like, yeah, and it's in the store? I was like, yeah. He's like, whoa. And he was impressed.
Yeah, that's what's
cool.
up with your old man.
And then he read it. He was like, I want to read your book. This was some time later, not that long ago now. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I had a copy on my shelf. I gave it to him. And he read it, and then he comes back. And it's weird about writing things. You kind of forget what you wrote sometimes. Like, you kind of get the idea of the story, but you don't remember every detail of it, especially if you write a lot of other things. And he comes back and goes, a lot of bad words in that book, Dad. And I was like, oh, yeah? Is there? And I was like, I don't think there's that many. He goes, Dad, look. And he opens up, and there was a panel. I forgot that there was this one point where a character just went on this whole, like, profane rampage. It was like a whole bubble of just profanity. I was like, oh, okay. I forgot about that.
Well,
so it was funny, but he's mature about that kind of thing. So
you put it out, and I
you
bought a copy,
sure.
but we didn't connect. I didn't go to wherever. Anyway, you had it for a long time.
I held it,
and then we crossed paths a handful of
at
Tuesdays.
Broadway Cafe.
Yeah, and you were pushing him in a stroller on this particular morning, and he was little and unhappy about something, and you were juggling a bunch of different things, and I was like, I know exactly what that feels like. So that tracks that he would now be, what? You wrote a book and it's in the store? Oh my God.
But I did give you the book eventually.
You did.
I think I feel like I carried one around for a while.
You did.
Until I ran into you again.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But point being, I didn't mean to gloss over the podcast stuff. I didn't mean to omit any.
I think we talked about it quite a bit, right?
Yeah, but that was supposed to be, okay, in this section we're going to examine all the creative things that you've done. We'll talk podcasts, and it'll be efficient time-wise, and then we'll talk about the book, and we'll talk about all of the other things that you've done, which I don't know what they are. But I think we covered a good amount of ground.
I think so, too.
And I can't thank you enough for coming. This was a really good time, and I had a lot of fun listening to your records. And if you ever do get around to checking out episode 33 with Adam Wilkie, there's 15. We talked about 15. Actually, I think I accidentally skipped one. So we talked about 14 jazz records.
Okay.
11 of which were his. And then he said anything by these 4 guys. And so I went and picked, not too different from how you picked that Coltrane record, Giant Steps. I picked a record by each of these anything bys just on a whim, just to have something. But he's really intelligent. He knows this Miles Coltrane, that whatever it is, the 50s into the 60s,
like
and
hard bop era.
He knows the stuff. So it might sound like I'm listening with equal, but it's not. That's not the case at all.
Cool.
Anyway,
well, I'll check it out for sure.
Thanks for coming, John. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Talk to you.
Appreciate it. Cool. All right, man. Very nice. Yeah.